Chapter 1109. The roar of the helicopter came rolling from the sky. Everyone who was trapped in the auction venue had a lingering fear on their faces. It didn't take long for the auction venue's door to be kicked open as a large number of soldiers in military uniforms rushed in. What's going on? More than 200 participants of the auction did not expect that someone from the military would come. For a moment, they looked at Tang Xiu with eyes full of alarm and fear. That included the old man in the second row. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with shock. Bang, 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 amid the orderly footsteps, Zhu Long came in with two experts from the Special Abilities Bureau. Under everyone's watchful eyes, he came to the auction stage. After saluting, he said in a deep voice, reporting to Chief, "Zhu Long is here to report. The chief is on the way here and will take about 40 minutes to get here." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Seal off the entire island. Monitor everything in the sky, underground, and underwater. Don't let even a fly escape." "Understood." Zhu Long replied and immediately rushed outside with his men. After a while, Old Mei came in with 5 or 6 strong men. He shook his head and forced a smile. "I can't find him. He seems to have disappeared into thin air." A cold light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes and he said in a deep voice, "The military quality of this man is good. He can actually avoid all the monitoring devices on the island and slip away unknowingly. But he can't run away as long as he's still in China." At the venue's seats, Ouyang Lulu stared at Tang Xiu in a daze. A glint flashed in her eyes. She never imagined that Tang Xiu would turn out to be someone from the State's Department. She had heard that Tan Xiu had done some things for the country before. But now, it seemed that her understanding of Tan Xiu was far from enough. However, his current appearance was really handsome. At the seat, apart from Grandma Zueying, only Miao Wentong knew that Tan Xiu had a national identity. Tang Wei, who had long known about Tan Xiu's identity but didn't expose Tan Xiu's identity, didn't expect that Tan Xiu was actually someone from the State Department. At this moment, he was completely in awe of his younger brother. Time flew by. When Duanmu Lin hurried over with a group of experts from the Special Abilities Bureau, the puzzled look on his face deepened when he saw the scene in the auction hall. He had always trusted Tan Xiu and believed that no matter what he did, he always had a sense of propriety. But the scene in front of him didn't seem like something big had happened. Tang, Duanmu Lin arrived in front of Tan Xiu. Just as he opened his mouth, he was stopped by Tan Xiu. After a while, when they came to the corner of the auction venue, Tan Xiu spoke in a deep voice, "Senior Duanmu, I need you to give me an explanation." Duanmu Lin forced a smile and said, "How did you end up like this? You still want to explain? What do you want me to explain to you?" Tan Xiu opened the yellow silk cloth covering the tray. When the aero glider appeared in front of Duanmu Lin, he suddenly stared blankly and realized something in a flash. How could this thing be here? Duanmu Lin lowered his voice and hurriedly asked. "I came here to participate in the auction, but I didn't expect to see a aero glider being auctioned here," said Tan Xiu. "I've called Kang Xia and she told me that there's no problem in the factory and that the security team is all our people. Also, I talked to the auction organizer and they said that the person who sent this aero glider has a military aura." Duanmu Lin's pupils shrunk and he instantly shouted, "I'll definitely give you an explanation about this matter. Who's in charge of this auction?" "It's me." With a forced smile on his face, Old Mei slowly walked over from a distance and said, "Duanmu, I didn't expect that we would meet on such an occasion. It seems that it's very easy for you to make a living in the country." Duanmu Lin's mind was on Tan Xiu just now, so he didn't notice his old friend for a while. After seeing Old Mei, he furrowed his brows and asked, "Old Mei, are you the one who organized this auction?" "That's right." Old Mei nodded. "The kids at home are tossing and turning, so I came here to join in the fun since I had nothing to do. I didn't expect that I would get into trouble." Duanmu Lin glanced around and immediately lowered his voice, "Old Mei, we used to be old comrades in arms, so we know each other very well. Now tell me, where did you get this thing from? I've already told this little brother Tang everything, said Elder Mei. It's really sent by someone. He has a military aura on him, and it's the aura of someone who has experienced a real war. I originally thought that he was a retired soldier, but I didn't expect that this matter might involve some secrets. Duan Mulin was silent for a while and then slowly said, can you tell me what he looks like? Or do you have his photos or surveillance videos? We do, answered Old Mei. No need to look for it. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, the boss here has just personally checked all the surveillance videos. All of them have been destroyed and the security guards in the monitoring room have been tied up and have been in a coma ever since. They haven't woken up until now. This is a very important matter, Tan Xiu, said Duan Mulin. Leave this matter to me. I'll definitely get to the bottom of this matter, said Duan Mulin. 3 days. I must get the news within 3 days. Tan Xiu nodded and said, after all, this is related to our cooperation. It's the magnificent Tang Corporation's responsibility to prevent the aero glider from flowing to the outside world. I know what to do. Don't worry, said Duan Mulin with a solemn expression. More than 10 kilometers away. Inside a coastal building, Li Yuchuan put down the binoculars in his hand with a bitter expression on his dark face. He knew that he had caused a terrible disaster this time, but he didn't regret it. His heart was full of annoyance and unwillingness. The aeroglider he had spent a lot of effort to steal was not auctioned, and instead, his identity was exposed. Money. I need money. I'll get a lot of money even if I have to die. That damned bastard. I've killed him, but my wife and child are still in danger. Since I can't buy the aeroglider, I can only get it through other channels. Li Yuchuan loosened his clenched fists and strode toward the door. He needed to hurry up and leave this place, even avoiding the surveillance cameras everywhere in Shanghai. He knew that he didn't have much time left. At the Blue Starfish Mansion. In a magnificent hall, Tan Xiu, Gu Changmin, Jin Xinkui, Tang Wei, Miao Wentong, Grandma Zuiying, Ji Mu, and the others were tasting the delicacies here and chatting about some topics after their reunion. Ouyang Lulu, who had a wild nature flowing in her bones, was like a docile kitten at the moment. She stayed at Tan Xiu's side and served him tea. Brother Miao, I didn't expect you to come to Shanghai. What a coincidence to bump into you here. I won't say many words of thanks for your help before. Come, let's drink, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Miao Wentong raised his glass and downed the wine with Tan Xiu. Then, he smilingly said, I didn't expect to bump into a busy man like you here. I came to Shanghai this time to prepare a project and look for partners. What project? Tan Xiu was surprised. Miao Wentong smiled and said, car sales. Miao Wentong smilingly said, our Miao Group's heavy industry factory produces a lot of cars. The order was originally from abroad, but something happened there, so it's been suppressed in our hands. At the side. Gu Changmin's expression shifted and he asked, Brother Miao, may I ask what kind of car models your Miao Group produces? We have all kinds of models, said Miao Wentong with a forced smile. Gu Changmin squinted his eyes and looked at Tan Xiu, asking, Brother Tang, do you have spare money in your hands? Why do you ask that, Brother Gu? Tan Xiu curiously asked. To tell you the truth, I'm also preparing a big project recently. I want to cooperate with you if you're interested, said Gu Changmin. Tell me about it, said Tan Xiu with a smile. I'm going to establish a logistics company, the largest logistics company in the country, said Gu Changmin. But I don't have much money in my hands at the moment, so I can only take out 6 billion yuan. I've asked a professional to estimate it. If I want to establish the most powerful logistics company in China, I'll need at least 30 billion yuan. That's why I'm afraid 30 billion yuan won't be enough. Logistics? I don't know much about logistics, said Tan Xiu with a frown. But the logistics companies in our country should be saturated by now, right? Especially those large logistics companies with networks all over the country. It seems that it's too late to get a share of the pie now. It's not too late. Gu Changmin shook his head. With e-commerce becoming more and more popular, online shopping has become a top priority. Although most of those e-commerce platforms have their own logistics networks, I can get a big piece of fat meat from their mouths as long as you cooperate with me. Tan Xiu was silent for a moment before he suddenly asked, then, have you ever thought about doing an online shopping platform? Like those online shopping malls. Doing logistics, at the very least, must have products to deliver. It's better to deliver your own products than others. Of course, it would be even better if I can deliver others' products at the same time. Gu Changmin's eyes lit up and he said, I'm naturally willing to do an online shopping platform if you're willing to cooperate with me. In fact, if you trust me, I only need your investment and your reputation to complete the online shopping platform and logistics. You know me well. I'm indeed too lazy to manage business matters. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing. Tell me, how much do you need me to invest? Miao Wentong didn't wait for Gu Changmin to answer Tan Xiu's question and smilingly said, Gentlemen, I'm also very interested in this business. How about I join? Chapter 11:10. Grandma Zueying was a cultivator and an old woman, but she was a very capable person. The growth of her family in the north was inseparable from her efforts. She didn't have many thoughts while watching the conversation between these young people. But then she thought about how to establish a relationship with Tan Xiu, so she smilingly said, although I don't pay much attention to business matters now, there are too many people in my family who need to make a living. How about you count me in as well? Tan Xiu glanced at Miao Wentong and Grandma Zueying. He shrugged his shoulders and smilingly said, I don't really care about how many people cooperate with me in this matter. I naturally have no problem with it as long as Big Brother Gu agrees. Gu Changmin was excited. He already knew the identity of Miao Wentong and Grandma Zueying. Adding Tan Xiu to the equation, the four-way cooperation would definitely work. Even if the four forces joined hands, wouldn't they be able to easily surpass the largest online shopping platforms in the country, as well as several large logistics companies? Doing business. What was the capital to speak? Money. As long as you had money, you could do it. And as long as you had enough money, you could make a name for yourself. With the four-way cooperation, you would have money and power, so why would you worry about not making money from your investment? Jin Xinkue pursed his lips and felt quite helpless inwardly. Most of his money had been invested in the newly developed real estate projects. Although he would be able to get back a large sum of money after half a year, he really didn't have the ability to meddle in it for now. Therefore, even if he realized that this was a project that would definitely make money, he was quite regretful that he didn't have the ability to do so. Suddenly, Ji Mu let out a dry smile and said, Everyone. Old brothers, can you take me along since you want to play? My family may not have much money, but it's still possible to hitch a ride with you, old brothers. The Ji family of Changxi City doesn't have much money. Gu Changmin couldn't help but roll his eyes. Although he had 10 to 20 billion in assets, it was nothing compared to the Ji family of Changxi City. The Ji family was a famous family in Changxi City with countless wealth. Even if it was less than 100 billion, it was at least 80 billion. However, he realized a problem and asked, Brother Ji, if your Ji family wants to join, then I will naturally raise both hands in approval. After all, you and Brother Tang are friends, so I naturally have no problem as long as he trusts you. However, can you make the decision for such a big matter? Although my father is still the patriarch of the Ji family, most of the power of the Ji family has been handed over to me. To put it bluntly, I now have the right to be the master of the entire Ji family. Gu Changmin rubbed his hands and excitedly said, That's great. As long as the 5 clans work together and each clan puts in some effort, we'll be able to reap a decent harvest. How about this, let's discuss it in detail. A chance encounter turned into a business investment cooperation forum. Tan Xiu didn't expect this, and neither did the others. However, naturally, no one would push away businesses that could make money. After negotiations, the 5 companies decided to invest 10 billion each, with a total investment of 50 billion for this project. Although Gu Changmin couldn't come up with so much money for the time being, he was still willing to take a loan from the bank to raise 10 billion. As the preliminary cooperation intention was reached, Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, "All right, since we've talked about it, I won't care about the business. I'll tell Kang Xia about the content we discussed today. As for the specific operation, let her handle it." Due to the time constraint, everyone asked for a guest room in the Blue Starfish Mansion after the discussion and prepared to rest for the night before leaving. However, Jimu didn't immediately go to rest even though he had asked for a guest room. He stayed beside Tan Xiu and watched the others leave. "Is there anything else?" Tan Xiu gave Ouyang Lulu a look. As Ouyang Lulu walked toward the direction of the guest room, Tan Xiu asked, "Do you have some time recently, Brother Tang?" Jimu nodded. "I'm going to marry my girlfriend, and I hope you can attend it when the time comes." "Your wedding date has been delayed until now." Tan Xiu was surprised. "It wasn't supposed to be delayed until now," said Jimu with a forced smile. "But something happened to the child, so it's been delayed." "What happened?" Tan Xiu's expression moved and asked. Jimu shook his head without a word and helplessly said, "Forget it. The child is gone anyway. I've been accompanying her recently and her mood has improved a lot." "Brother Tang, you haven't told me if you have some time recently." "What date are you going to hold it?" asked Tan Xiu. "The first day of next month," answered Jimu. Tan Xiu calculated the time and said, "There are still more than 10 days before the first day of next month, and I don't know if I have anything to do after that. But if there's nothing important, I'll definitely go to Chengxi myself. If I have something to do, I'll send someone to deliver the gift. Please don't mind it if that happens." A smile immediately appeared on Jimu's face upon hearing it. He nodded and said, "I understand. I won't mind it." Shortly after, Jimu returned to his room. Tan Xiu took out a half-pack of cigarettes from his interspatial ring and lit one up. He didn't hurry to go back to his room to rest but stood in the corridor and looked at the building where the auction venue was located. The building was still brightly lit and there was no news coming. As a matter of fact, Tan Xiu felt relieved after figuring out that it was the problem with the military. He didn't need to give Duan Mulin an explanation as long as it was not the magnificent Tang Corporation. Not only did the aeroglider not affect him, but it also brought him some benefits instead. At the very least, the aeroglider manufactured by the magnificent Tang Corporation had been known by some wealthy businessmen and celebrities. When this product was sold to the public, some of them would jump out to support it. "Aren't you going to rest?" Half an hour later, Ouyang Lulu came out of her room and came to Tan Xiu's side and asked softly. "No need to rush." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "There's no news from the auction venue, so I can't be 100% assured. As a matter of fact, you don't need to worry about anything as long as it's not the magnificent Tang Corporation," said Ouyang Lulu. "On the contrary, Duan Mulin will have to give you an explanation if there's a problem with the military. I know you're smart, but I didn't expect you to be able to see through this matter." Tan Xiu smiled. "I hope Duan Mulin can figure out the truth of the matter as soon as possible, else I won't feel at ease. If you're still worried, why don't you go there and see the situation?" Ouyang Lulu chuckled. "I understand what you mean." Tan Xiu shook his head. "Duan Mulin won't put the shit on our heads if there's a problem with the military." Just as Ouyang Lulu was about to speak, her expression suddenly shifted. She looked at a group of people coming from the distance and her eyes finally landed on Duan Mulin. "It seems there's a result." Tan Xiu nodded indifferently and calmly waited for Duan Mulin to come with a group of people. Then, he asked, "Senior Duanmu, have you investigated the matter?" Duan Mulin's expression turned a bit ugly. He nodded and said, "Let's find a quiet room to talk." "All right." Tan Xiu led Duan Mulin and the others to the hall where he had a drink with Miao Wentong and the others. The place was very clean since the attendants had cleaned it. After taking a seat, Duan Mulin forced a smile and said, I've investigated it thoroughly, Tan Xiu. There's indeed a problem with the military. I've communicated with the military and learned that a retired officer named Li Yuchuan stole a aero glider from the military warehouse due to some special reasons. I checked the serial number and found that it's the aero glider that appeared in this auction. May I know what the special reason is? Asked Tan Xiu. It's hard for me to talk about the open and covert struggles in the army, said Duanmu Lin with a forced smile. Forget it. You don't need to ask about it. I've already issued a nationwide warrant to arrest Li Yuchuan. The intelligence network of the intelligence department has also been fully activated. We'll definitely catch him in the shortest time possible. Tan Xiu nodded and said, this incident also gave me a wake-up call. It seems that the security of the magnificent Tang Corporation needs to be further strengthened. Senior Duanmu, I happen to be free recently, so I'll set up a security company. What do you think? A security company? Duanmu Lin felt a bit helpless inwardly. Tan Xiu's power was already big enough, and it would be like adding wings to a tiger if he were to set up a security company. Many things that were inconvenient for cultivators could be handed over to the security company. Should he disagree? He found that he really didn't dare to disagree. After all, the other party's point of entry was very precise. If he didn't agree and the flying discs produced by the magnificent Tang Corporation were to leak out later, it would have nothing to do with Tang Xiu at that time. Tang Xiu wouldn't have to bear any responsibility after the accident happened if he didn't agree to set up a security company. Do whatever you want, Tan Xiu. I'll inform them about the procedures needed to set up the security company, said Duanmu Lin with a nod. Thank you, Senior Duanmu. Tan Xiu smiled and said, don't hesitate to call me if you need me to do anything in the future. I'm duty-bound for the peace and stability of Huaxia. Duanmu Lin got up and said, I'll be able to sleep soundly after hearing your words. Anyways, I won't disturb your rest anymore. This matter will come to an end after we catch that Li Yuchuan. Tan Xiu also got up and asked, I have one last question, Senior Duanmu. What is it? Asked Duanmu Lin. How did you deal with those wealthy businessmen and celebrities who participated in the auction? Asked Tan Xiu. What else can I do? Duanmu Lin forced a wry smile. They just participated in the auction and didn't violate any laws. I can't act recklessly even if I have the Shang Fang sword. They have all signed confidentiality agreements, and I'll send some people to keep an eye on them. Anyone who dares to disclose anything about the aero glider will be charged with treason and sentenced to death. Chapter 1111. Magic City. Outside a high-end shop in the most prosperous neighborhood of the Redwood District, Li Yuchuan, dressed in a black leather coat, raised his hand to press down on the brim of his cap. His eyes were fixed on the shop's plaque. The golden characters were particularly dazzling under the reflection of the distant lights. God's Nectar number 00006. God's Nectar. The best wine produced by the magnificent Tang Corporation was absolutely the king of wines, and no other wine in history could compare with it. But the price of God's Nectar was also very expensive, with the price of a bottle starting from 5 digits. Li Yuchuan had drunk God's Nectar before. It was his old chief who got 2 bottles through some unknown channels. As for him and his team members, because they had completed an outstanding mission, they were rewarded. The 7 of them drank a bottle together. From that moment on, he dreamed of drinking God's Nectar again. The situation of the auction made him very clear that it was impossible for him to get auction funds from the auction organizer. He was in urgent need of money, so after thinking it over and over again, he made a serious judgment and finally set his eyes on the God's Nectar exclusive store. Before he gave the aero glider to the auction house, he had actually left a way out for himself, which was to ransack the God's Nectar exclusive store. It would be best if he could get the money. But if he couldn't get the money, he could directly get a batch of God's Nectar and leave. As long as he had God's Nectar in his hands, he believed that countless rich people who loved wine would scramble to buy it. A few minutes later, Li Yuchuan quietly came to the back of the shop. After observing the alley for a while, his vigorous figure instantly sprinted and quickly appeared at the window on the 2nd floor. A sharp blade appeared in his hand, and he easily opened the window lock that was locked from the inside. The batch of God's nectar that arrived yesterday is definitely not sold out. Generally, this kind of shop will reserve the next batch of wine in case of special circumstances. As for the cash truck that came this afternoon, it shouldn't have taken away all the money in the shop, 2 million. I must get 2 million. After entering the room on the second floor, Li Yuchuan looked around and found that it was a storage room with some sundries. He quietly came to the door, opened it a crack, and looked outside. After observing, he found that there was no one in the corridor outside, and the entire interior of the shop was dark. Immediately after, he flashed out. However, he didn't notice that a dark shadow had silently entered the room from the window he had just sneaked in and had quietly followed him. Observe and seek. Soon, Li Yuchuan found 60 boxes of God's nectar stored on the second floor. The wine boxes had not been opened and were neatly placed against the wall. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not directly steal the wine, so after searching for a while, he found the office on the second floor. The safe is really well hidden. Li Yuchuan found the safe behind the painting hanging on the wall behind a row of bookshelves. He was definitely an expert in opening safes. After he inserted a bent iron wire into the safe, the first lock was quickly opened. Then, he used other methods to solve the fingerprint verification and digital password. Finally, the safe door slowly opened. This money? Li Yuchuan took a few glances and found that the cash in the safe was about 300,000 yuan, which was 1.7 million yuan short of the 2 million he needed. Alas, it seems that I can only steal some God's nectar. 10 boxes of God's nectar should be enough. However, the car I got could hold 10 boxes of God's nectar, but it would be difficult to get it out of Shanghai smoothly. I'm afraid it'll be easy to find out if I sell it in Shanghai, Li Yuchuan sighed and muttered to himself. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind him, "Don't waste your effort since it won't be easy to get it out of Shanghai." Who's there? Li Yuchuan felt goosebumps all over his body. He drew a sharp Mitsubishi Army knife from his waist and turned around. In the dimly lit room, he could clearly see the middle-aged man leaning against the door. It's the security guard of this shop. A faint smile appeared on the middle-aged man's face. He should be rewarded for catching a powerful thief, right? He wasn't like the Tang sect's inner court disciples who could easily buy medicinal pills from the sect. A few days ago, he had to spend a lot of effort to beg an inner court disciple for help and used all his money to buy medicinal pills. The current him could be said to be as poor as a church mouse. Li Yuchuan crossed the Mitsubishi Army knife in front of his chest and coldly said, "I don't want to hurt or kill anyone. But I'm in urgent need of money, so I hope you won't stop me or resist me. I'll just tie you up and the shop staff will naturally untie you tomorrow morning." Wen Liang squinted his eyes and lightly smiled. "If my guess is correct, you should be a soldier, right? Besides, you should have just left the army not long ago, yet your military aura hasn't been polished by ordinary life. Forget it, I can let you go tonight considering that I'm also a soldier. But you must promise me that you won't steal from now on." Li Yuchuan stared blankly for a moment and then coldly said, "I need money. I need a lot of money in the shortest time, and this is one of the best ways. Do you think you can handle me? Is it that difficult to handle you?" asked Wen Liang with a smile. "I'm too lazy to waste my breath with you. Just give up and let me tie you up or be subdued." Li Yuchuan sneered. "Bring it on, then." Wen Liang hooked his finger and smilingly said, "Humph, humph." Snorting coldly, Li Yuchuan moved lightning fast and dashed to the front of Wen Liang in an instant. As the Mitsubishi Army knife stabbed toward Wen Liang's shoulder, his other fist also punched out. "Ha! Military jab fist. You're from the Blue Eagle Special Force." Wen Liang dodged the Mitsubishi Army knife and punched Li Yuchuan. His body remained motionless, but Li Yuchuan retreated 4 or 5 steps back and asked in surprise. Li Yuchuan's pupils constricted and a look of disbelief burst out of his eyes. He felt as if his fist had struck a hard rock. The piercing pain in his fist bones made him feel a chill in his heart. He didn't continue to attack and instead looked at Wen Liang with vigilance and shouted in a deep voice, "Who the hell are you?" Only a few people know about the military jab fist. It's a unique move of the Blue Eagle Special Force. How do you know about it? Because I used to be a member of the Blue Eagle Special Force, said Wen Liang lightly. That's impossible. Li Yuchuan angrily retorted. I served in the Blue Eagle Special Force for 4 years and was its captain. I've never seen you before. No, that's not right. Your age, it turns out that you're a former member. But how did you become a security guard? Is it shameful to be a security guard? Asked Wen Liang. I'm afraid that countless people want to fight for this security guard position, yet they can't get it. But you, an elite from the Blue Eagle Special Force, actually did such a dirty thing. You're a disgrace to the Blue Eagle Special Force. Li Yuchuan's face was burning and he felt too ashamed to show his face. He wanted to defend himself, but the words were swallowed back into his stomach. I'm short on money. Li Yuchuan forced himself to speak out. There are plenty of people who are short on money, but they won't go so far as to steal, sneered Wen Liang. Let me tell you something. The surveillance cameras have been recording you ever since you appeared outside the store. Even when you sneaked into the store, it was all within their range. That's why I was willing to let you go just now because I was prepared to delete the surveillance footage. But now that you actually attacked me and even took out a Mitsubishi Army knife, there's no way I'll let you go again. I respect you as a former member of the team and I really don't want to fight you again, said Li Yuchuan coldly. But I really need money, so I can only apologize. Wen Liang's brows pricked and his figure instantly appeared in front of Li Yuchuan. A lightning-fast punch landed on Li Yuchuan's chest, followed by a swift whip kick to his face. After knocking him down to the ground, he followed up and directly restrained him. Then, he pulled a rope over, tied Li Yuchuan up, and threw him into a corner. I'll give you one last chance. Tell me why you came here to steal. Don't use the lack of money as an excuse. Even if you want to explain, you must tell me why you're short on money. Li Yuchuan was scared stiff at the moment. He was very confident in his own strength, especially in fighting. He had won the championship of the entire military competition and was definitely the king of fighting in the hearts of countless people. Yet, he didn't even have the strength to fight back against this middle-aged man in front of him and was subdued. How was this possible? Could it be, the former members of the Blue Eagle Special Combat Squad all had such terrifying fighting prowess? Li Yuchuan was silent for a few minutes before he gritted his teeth and spoke with an unwilling expression, I need money to save my wife and child. Save your wife and child? Sneered Wen Liang. You need 2 million. Li Yuchuan was aghast. You've been following me since the moment I came in. That's right. Wen Liang nodded. I really can't believe that the Blue Eagle Special Combat Squad will let you go given your strength. Li Yuchuan said with a respectful expression. That's right. I really need 2 million because I don't have much time left. As long as I get 2 million and give it to that bastard, he'll release my wife and child. Who's that bastard? Asked Wen Liang with a frown. Chang Zhao, Chang Guoxin's nephew, answered Li Yuchuan. A glint flashed in Wen Liang's eyes and he slowly said, Chang Guoxin. He used to be a senior colonel, so he should have general stars on his shoulders now, right? His nephew shouldn't be a member of the military. But I'm very curious why his nephew wants to capture your wife and child and even want you to pay 2 million to ransom them. I'm just a victim in the factional struggle, said Li Yuchuan coldly. Wen Liang nodded and took out his mobile phone to dial a number. After the call was connected, he said, Captain, there's a special situation at God's Nectar Store 00006. I need you to come here. Chapter 11-12. Firmly tied up, Li Yuchuan naturally heard what Wen Liang said on the phone. If he was shocked by Wen Liang's strength just now, then the word, Captain, coming out of Wen Liang's mouth at this moment was enough to set off a storm in his heart. Who is it? Given this middle-aged man's strength, Who else is qualified to be his captain? Li Yuchuan suddenly realized that he seemed to have fallen into a huge whirlpool, and this whirlpool was either a meat grinder or an opportunity for him. After watching Wen Liang hang up the phone, he asked again, "Who exactly are you?" "You're not qualified to know who I am," said Wen Liang with a faint smile. "Someone will come to pick you up soon, so I hope you're lucky enough to keep your life." Li Yuchuan took a deep breath and said, "I know what kind of ending I'll face next. It's nothing but death. But before I die, can I ask you for a favor?" "I know what you want to ask of me." Wen Liang shook his head indifferently. "But I'm sorry. I have my duty, so I can't save your family." Instantly, Li Yuchuan's face turned ashen and intense despair filled his heart. However, he was unwilling to give up. Even if he couldn't kill the bastard who kidnapped his wife and child, he still hoped that his wife and child could be safe and sound. With this unwillingness, he almost begged, "We're both members of the Blue Eagle Special Force, so you're also my senior. I know stealing is wrong, but I really have no other way. It's actually very easy for you to get 2 million yuan with your skill. You don't need to come here." Wen Liang shook his head. "I just don't get it. Why do you keep emphasizing that you don't have time? Are you afraid that Chang Zhao will kill the hostage? Or that your family will die?" "Chang Zhao won't kill the hostage anytime soon," said Li Yuchuan with a bitter smile. "I'm the one he wants to clean up. The reason why he asked for 2 million yuan is that he wants to destroy me mentally. I just emphasized that I don't have time because I've done something even worse." "You killed someone?" asked Wen Liang with a faint smile. "It's more serious than killing someone." Li Yuchuan shook his head. Wen Liang revealed a surprised expression and said, "Tell me about it. If your answer can surprise me, I can plead with the captain for you. Maybe the captain will be kind enough to let you go." Li Yuchuan's eyes lit up, but they immediately dimmed down. He shook his head and said, "I can't tell you. Only death awaits me once I do. Senior, I, Li Yuchuan, rarely ask for help in my life, but I'm begging you. Help me save my wife and child. If there's an afterlife, I, Li Yuchuan, am willing to repay your kindness even if I have to work like an ox or a horse." Wen Liang said, "As I said, I have my duty. I absolutely don't have time to help you save people. Of course, when you see the captain later, you can beg him. If he agrees, I can help." "Who is your captain?" asked Li Yuchuan hurriedly. Wen Liang shook his head and said, "The captain's identity is also not something you can understand. Let me give you a piece of advice. Don't ask questions like, 'Who are you?' because knowing it won't do you any good. Instead, it will speed up your death." Mysterious organization. Li Yuchuan suddenly realized the situation, and the way he looked at Wen Liang was completely different from before. 20 minutes later, the door was pushed open from the outside as a burly middle-aged man with a grim expression came inside. His expression slightly moved when he saw Li Yuchuan inside. "You..." Li Yuchuan's pupils suddenly shrunk after seeing the newcomer, and a horrified look appeared on his face. He simply couldn't believe his eyes. The man he once thought to be dead had now appeared in front of him intact and unscathed. Furthermore, he should be the one Wen Liang addressed as captain. What the hell is going on here? How could the former soul of the army, the iron-blooded king of the army, appear here? Wolf Head, who had just been transferred back to China to receive orders to assist Jin Shi in establishing the country's intelligence network, faintly glanced at Wen Liang after seeing the tied-up Li Yuchuan and said, "You've given me some trouble." "What kind of trouble?" asked Wen Liang, confused. "He knows me. We're old acquaintances." Wolf Head coldly snorted. "Am I right? Yuchuan brat?" Wolf Head snorted coldly. Li Yuchuan's lips squirmed and he said in a trembling voice, "Wolf, no, instructor, didn't you die while carrying out a mission abroad?" "That's just what the military said." Wolf Head shook his head. "I actually left the army long ago. On the other hand, why are you here?" "He snuck in to steal things, Captain, said Wen Liang. I caught him on the spot. Since he's your old acquaintance, in order to not expose your identity, I'll just kill him now and destroy his corpse to get rid of the evidence. Wolfhead stopped Wen Liang and incredulously looked at Li Yuchuan. You actually stole things? And you even came here to steal things? I need money. My wife and children were kidnapped, so I need 2 million to ransom them, said Li Yuchuan bitterly. Wolfhead was silent for a moment and rubbed his temples, feeling a bit of a headache. His current identity needed to be kept absolutely confidential, yet Li Yuchuan had recognized him. He really didn't know what to do unless he killed him. Stealing things. It was just a trivial matter and he could at most teach him a lesson. However, his identity was likely to be exposed if he let Li Yuchuan go. He didn't want to bear such a result, and he believed that Sect Master Tan Xiu didn't want to see it either. Pa! Wolfhead took out a lighter and a cigarette. A sharp dagger shot out and cut the rope tying Li Yuchuan's body. He lit the cigarette and took a few deep puffs, saying, I'll make a call first. At the Blue Starfish Mansion. Tan Xiu, who had just fallen asleep, was disturbed by his mobile phone's ringtone. He looked at the caller ID and picked it up, asking, What's up, Wolfhead? There's an accident, Sect Master. My identity was discovered by an old acquaintance, and I've already met him. Wolfhead's bitter laughter came out of the phone. Do you still need to report this to me? Tan Xiu lightly said. Just gag him with your method. If you can't do it, just get rid of him. Wolfhead forced a wry smile and said, Sect Master, he used to be my cadet in the army. He's also a vanguard that I was very optimistic about. I really can't do it if I want to kill him. Also, the current situation is a bit special. He's in our God's Nectar exclusive store, number 00006. How come he's there? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. He came here to steal things and was caught by Wen Liang on the spot, said Wolfhead. He was once a vanguard in the army? Asked Tan Xiu with a strange expression. A member you're optimistic about actually stole things? And he even stole from us. Li Yuchuan's family was kidnapped, so he needs a large sum of money to redeem them, said Wolfhead. That's why he accidentally stole from our exclusive store. How do you want to solve this matter, Sect Master? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then slowly said, You have two choices. First, you completely gag his mouth, no matter what method you use. Second, you go back to Nine Dragons Island to be punished. You're not allowed to step out of the island for 10 years. After saying that, Tan Xiu directly hung up the phone. A bit of anger appeared on his handsome face as he threw the phone on the bedside table and lay down again. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression slightly changed and a name came to his mind, Li Yuchuan. In a flash, Tan Xiu took out his mobile again, dialed Wolfhead's cell number, and quickly asked, What's the name of the man you just caught, Wolfhead? Li Yuchuan. Wolfhead felt a bit bitter inwardly. Just as he was hesitating, he received a call from Tan Xiu and respectfully answered Tan Xiu's question. Li Yuchuan? Asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. He's from the army. He retired this year. Wolfhead walked into the room and asked Li Yuchuan. Then, he took the phone and said, Yes, he just retired this year. It hasn't been that long. Ask him now, did he steal the aeroglider from the army? Asked Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Wolfhead didn't know what the aeroglider was, but he still followed Tan Xiu's order and looked at Li Yuchuan, asking, Answer my question. Did you steal the aeroglider from the army? The aeroglider? Li Yuchuan was shaken inwardly and despair filled his heart. He knew that he had been completely exposed, and his only hope now was to ask Wolfhead to save his wife and child. Therefore, he nodded and said, Yes, I stole it. I also entrusted the auction organizer of the Blue Starfish Mansion to auction it off. Tan Xiu, who was holding the phone, naturally heard Li Yuchuan's answer. He was at a loss whether to cry or laugh at the moment. Duan Mulin was desperately searching for Li Yuchuan's whereabouts, yet he didn't expect that the man would fall into the hands of his men. The funniest thing was that he was caught by his men because he stole the property from the God's Nectar store. Was his family kidnapped? Tan Xiu pondered for a moment and listened to Wolf Head's report on the phone. All kinds of thoughts were churning inside his mind. He was unwilling to hand Li Yuchuan over to Duan Mulin directly because Duan Mulin had already activated too many channels to capture Li Yuchuan. If he found Li Yuchuan one step ahead of Duan Mulin would definitely suspect that his intelligence network was even better than the country's. Duan Mulin wouldn't do anything to him even if he was afraid of him since he was strong. But once Duan Mulin realized that he had a terrifying intelligence network, his fear of him would greatly increase. He might even use all his power to investigate his intelligence network, just like how he dealt with the Dark Wind organization. He might even make some bad moves. After a long while, Wolf Head, escort Li Yuchuan to the Blue Star Villa complex in secret, ordered Tan Xiu in a deep voice. Keep in mind that China's intelligence network is now searching for his whereabouts. You must do it secretly. Understood. Chapter 11-13. Tan Xiu hung up and looked at Ouyang Lulu, who was staring at him with wide eyes. He forced a wry smile and said, "You've heard the conversation just now. I have to get away and take care of this myself. Lulu, you stay here. I'll go to the Paradise Manor to find you after I'm done with this matter." "Why didn't you give Li Yuchuan to Duan Mulin?" asked Ouyang Lulu curiously. Tan Xiu explained his concerns to Ouyang Lulu. He looked at her expression and finally said, "The most important thing now is to make Li Yuchuan shut his mouth. Whether it's me or Duan Mulin, this is the reason why we're looking for him. I must go there myself to feel relieved." Realizing the seriousness of this matter, Ouyang Lulu said, "I'll go with you. Otherwise, if you suddenly leave and leave me here, it will arouse Duan Mulin's curiosity." "Alright, but you can't go back to the Blue Star Villa complex with me." Tan Xiu thought for a while and said, "I don't want you to get involved in this matter. You can go back to the Blue Star Villa complex directly after we leave this place," said Ouyang Lulu with a smile. "I'll go back to the Paradise Manor and wait for you there." Tan Xiu felt a bit sorry for Ouyang Lulu since he didn't know whether Mu Weining would return to the Blue Star Villa complex to rest at night or not. If she was there and he rashly took Ouyang Lulu back, it would be a headache for him. Number 00006 God's Nectar Exclusive Store. After Wolfhead hung up the phone, he looked at Li Yuchuan and said, "If my guess is correct, my boss should be able to rescue your wife and child. But you must come with me to see him in person." "Your boss?" Li Yuchuan's mouth twitched a few times and the shock inwardly became more intense. Never did he expect that someone would be able to take Wolfhead for his own use given his personality and strength. Moreover, Wolfhead's appearance showed that he was very respectful toward his boss. He wanted to ask Wolfhead who this boss was, but he recalled Wen Liang's warning to him before. He could only suppress his strong curiosity and nodded, "As long as I can save my wife and child, I'm willing to do it even if you directly kill me afterward." Wolfhead patted his shoulder and said, "You're a man, and I can see that you have difficulties. Let's go. When the time comes, tell my boss everything about you. He is a reasonable person and will make arrangements." At 1 a.m. When Tang Xiu returned to Blue Star Villa complex, he saw Wolfhead and Li Yuchuan inside the conference room. His eyes lingered on Li Yuchuan a few times before he lightly said, "You're Li Yuchuan, right? You're the one who stole the flying disc from the army." "The one who stole the flying disc from the army? Anyhow, I'm very curious about where you got the courage from." "Boss," Xiu said, and you, Feng, flying. How did you manage to steal it?" "I used to be a member of the Blue Eagle Special Force, and I was even its captain," said Li Yuchuan. "Because of the power struggle between the higher-ups, I was framed and became a victim. My superior's enemy had won the game, so he instructed his nephew outside to make me suffer miserably. That's why his nephew kidnapped my wife and child and demanded me to pay $2 million for ransom." Tan Xiu frowned and said, "You can redeem him for $2 million. The probability is only 1%, maybe less than 1%, said Li Yuchuan bitterly. But I need to know where my wife and child are. If they don't let me go, I'll take them by force. If I were to fight with experts from other countries, I might be a little afraid, but I'm still confident that I can easily take care of those who kidnapped my wife and child. Tan Xiu said, it's a pity that you won't have the chance, because the National Intelligence Network has been completely spread out. Now they are searching for you all over the world. Once they find you, they will arrest you, and it's very likely that they will kill you on the spot. Li Yuchuan nodded and said, I understand what you just said, but I have to gamble. It's just that I didn't expect to lose so miserably. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, actually, it's not up to you to decide whether you win or lose. I can help you if you can promise me something. Li Yuchuan's eyes lit up. What he was looking forward to the most was a promise, so he resolutely said, I'll promise you anything as long as you can help me rescue my wife and child, including my life. I won't even frown if you want to kill me. A corpse is useless to me, said Tan Xiu indifferently. I can save your wife and child. I guarantee you that I can rescue them as long as they're still alive. My condition is that once I rescue your wife and child, you must take the initiative to expose your whereabouts and let the country's people find you. You'll walk right into a trap. That's it. Li Yuchuan was dumbfounded. What kind of condition was that? He could directly hand him over to the people who captured him if he wanted to. I haven't finished yet, said Tan Xiu. You must never tell anyone that you've seen me after you walk right into the trap, let alone Wolf Head and the God's Nectar exclusive store. I give you my word, said Li Yuchuan without hesitation. Tan Xiu nodded and said, only death will await you once you walk right into the trap. However, I may be able to save your life if I come forward. I'll follow your instructions, said Li Yuchuan respectfully. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and stretched out a finger, asking, I'll ask you one last question. You must answer honestly without any concealment. Please ask. Replied Li Yuchuan solemnly. Did you tell anyone else about the aeroglider aside from the auction organizer? Asked Tan Xiu. No. Li Yuchuan shook his head. I spent a lot of effort to find out about the Blue Starfish Mansion's auction just to get rid of the aeroglider. The aeroglider is too important that I didn't dare to tell anyone else. I didn't even tell them all the functions of the aeroglider when I told the auction house about it. Tan Xiu already knew about this matter, so he nodded and said, okay, that's it then. Tell me where your wife and children are being held, or how to contact them. I have a mobile phone with me, said Li Yuchuan. He told me to call the only number on the phone once I've collected enough money. I don't know where they are, though. Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and said, call them immediately and tell them you've collected the money. Then ask them where the transaction is. Li Yuchuan dialed the number according to Tan Xiu's instructions, but nobody answered. He dialed the number 4 or 5 times in a row, but nobody answered in the end. The other party is probably sleeping at this time. Since you can't get through now, then just wait. Rest here tonight and contact them first thing in the morning, ordered Tan Xiu. After settling Li Yuchuan down, Tan Xiu took Wolf Head to his study. As the two men lit up cigarettes, Tan Xiu sighed and said, there are fights wherever there are people. It seems that the struggle for power in the military is even more intense. Given Li Yuchuan's ability, he can still solve a lot of problems for the country if he continues to stay in the army and carry out missions that many people can't. It's a pity that he's such a capable soldier. I've been there before, Sect Master, so I naturally know the situation inside, sneered Wolf Head. Li Yuchuan is actually very pitiful, but the other party is very hateful. As the saying goes, one should not bring misfortune to one's wife and children. But the other party even kidnapped Li Yuchuan's wife and children. This is really despicable. Maybe they're trying to make an example out of him, said Tan Xiu lightly. Do you really want to save Li Yuchuan's life, Sect Master? Asked Wolf Head hesitantly. Li Yuchuan is now in despair, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. He'll give his life to the other party once he gets such a person for his own use. Furthermore, he's also a talented person. He's likely to become a great person in the future if he's nurtured well. Thank you, Sect Master, said Wolfhead gratefully. No need to thank me. Tan Xiu waved his hand and said, I won't stand idly by even if I met an ordinary person whose wife and children were kidnapped. It's just that I'm afraid I'll have to ask Duan Mulin for a favor because of this Liu Chuan. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for the time being. What's the progress of Jin Shi's intelligence network preparation? I just came here less than a week ago, so I don't know the specifics, said Wolfhead respectfully. But one thing is certain. He has bought a lot of people in the southern part of China and has laid out a basic layout. Also, there's one more thing. Jin Shi has broken through to the Golden Core stage. I'm aware of the whole situation. Tan Xiu nodded. Leave the establishment of the intelligence network to Jin Shi. I think he can do it well. Since you've returned to China, you must help him well and strive to lay out the entire intelligence network in China in the shortest time possible. Then, I need to lay out the intelligence network in every corner of the world. Haste makes waste, Sect Master, said Wolfhead. I understand what you're saying, but time doesn't wait for me. Sighed Tan Xiu. The only way now is to throw a lot of money. I believe Jin Shi can still do a good job with this foundation. Wolfhead hesitated for a moment and said, I actually have a suggestion, boss, but I don't know whether I should say it or not. What is it? Asked Tan Xiu. Tang's sect has a lot of inner sect disciples, but I think the number of outer sect disciples is too few, said Wolfhead. Excluding the children we've been training, there are only hundreds of outer sect disciples. If we want to develop our sect, I think we should secretly recruit some capable people, such as some businessmen in China. Chapter 11:14. As the saying goes, collective strength is like steel, and everyone's wisdom is like the sun and the moon. Tan Xiu had experienced thousands of years, so how could he not understand the meaning of this sentence? 1 was alone, 2 were powerful, and 3 could make the river move. The enemies he would have to face in the future were all supremes in the immortal world with monstrous strength and a large number of powerhouses in their hands. If he were to face them alone, even if he were to return to his former peak cultivation, it would still be very difficult for him to kill all the enemies. However, if he had more subordinates and cultivated a large number of powerhouses, it would be much easier for him to take revenge in the future. For example, if those enemies had tens of thousands of powerhouses as subordinates, then he must have tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of subordinates. Ants may be small, but countless of them could still bite an elephant to death. Tan Xiu immediately adopted Wolfhead's suggestion and decided to recruit a group of subordinates with prominent identities. After all, to build a team on Earth was naturally inseparable from money, power, and influence in all aspects. However, he needed to think carefully about who would be the most suitable person to do this. After all, this kind of thing had to be kept secret. Not even the slightest bit of information could be leaked. Wolfhead looked at Tan Xiu's thoughtful expression and knew that Tan Xiu was considering his suggestion. After hesitating for a while, he said in a low voice, Sect Master, this matter doesn't need to be rushed for a while. If we want to select people with clean and prominent identities, we need the in-depth cooperation of the intelligence network. The intelligence network we've set up is just in its embryonic form, so the top priority is still the intelligence network. Once our intelligence network is completely laid out, it will be the most suitable time to do this. What you said makes sense, but you've also overlooked some issues. Tan Xiu nodded. Laying out an intelligence network is not only to be built at the bottom of society, but also requires people at all levels, from all walks of life, and with distinct identities. Otherwise, ordinary people wouldn't be able to get their hands on some high-level information. Only the rich, famous, and powerful people would be able to get their hands on it. Notify Jin Shi to immediately rush to Demonic City. I'll arrange for him to handle this matter. Upon hearing this, Wolfhead respectfully nodded and said, I'll notify him right away. At this moment, Wolfhead thoroughly understood that his way of thinking was too narrow, and there was also a problem with the way he looked at the problem. Where did this information come from? Naturally, it came from the intelligence agents. If they only trained intelligence agents among ordinary people, there were indeed many circles and many levels of intelligence that could not be obtained. In the early morning, an ordinary Buick sedan drove into the Blue Star Villa complex. As the two young men hurried into the villa where Tan Xiu lived, they soon saw Tan Xiu eating breakfast. "Boss." The two of them looked at Mu Weining, who was eating with Tan Xiu, and greeted her respectfully. "There's no need to hide any information from Weining in the future," said Tan Xiu lightly. "Tell me, what's the result of the information I asked you to investigate last night?" A young man took out a stack of documents from his briefcase and handed it to Tan Xiu, saying, "Chang Guoxin, a major general of the southern military region, the most powerful figure in the Chang family in the imperial capital and the patriarch of the Chang family." Their backer was the imperial capital's Tang family. This time, it could be said that the Tang family had won the game in the Southern Army. According to reliable sources, Chang Guoxin is likely to advance further in the near future, adding another star on his shoulder. Chang Zhao is Chang Guoxin's nephew. Since Chang Guoxin has no biological son, he raised Chang Zhao as his own. It's a pity that Chang Zhao isn't a soldier material, so he relied on his uncle's relationship and the company established by his father to commit a lot of atrocious things over the years. "Because I'll look at the information myself later," interrupted Tan Xiu. "What I want to know is where Li Yuquan's wife and son are now." "At the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs," answered the young man. Tan Xiu thought for a while and shook his head. "A rat's droppings spoil a pot of soup. Chang Guoxin was cultivated by the Tang family, so he's one of us. But this nephew of his is not a good person. It seems he needs to be taught a lesson." After waving his hand to order the two intelligence agents to leave, Tan Xiu accompanied Mu Weining to finish the rest of the breakfast. Then, he wiped the corner of his mouth and smilingly said, "I have something to do today, so you can busy yourself. Also, I'll probably be very busy for some time. I'm afraid I'll have to travel all over the country, so I won't have much time to accompany you." "I know you're a busy man," said Mu Weining with a chuckle. "Don't worry. I can take care of myself, so you can be at ease and busy yourself." Tan Xiu got up with a smile and raised his hand to stroke her soft hair. Then, he turned around and left. After coming to the living room, he looked at Wolfhead sitting on the sofa and said in a deep voice, "Take Li Yuquan to the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs. Tell Jean sure to meet me there if he comes." "Understood." Wolfhead knew that Tan Xiu was about to take action and immediately ran to another villa outside. Soon after, two cars started outside the courtyard and quickly left the Blue Star Villa complex under the watchful eyes of Mu Weining on the balcony on the second floor. At the Lotus Leaf Tea House in the western suburbs of Shanghai. The antique tea house had a total of 3 floors with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, giving off a classical atmosphere. There was a rock garden in the hall on the first floor. Beside the rock garden, there was an ancient tree that had been trimmed in an ingenious way. On the lush branches, there were even a few birds chirping. The second floor was filled with private boxes, each of which was very large. The classical decorations inside were full of charm, looking like the study rooms of scholars in ancient times. In the middle of the third floor was the office area, where the general manager's office was located. Around it were the observation tea houses, where one could sit and enjoy the beautiful scenery outside. Inside the 100-square-meter general manager's office, a beautiful woman in a bubble dress lazily nestled on the sofa with smoke curling up from a cigarette between her fingers. The oval-shaped face had flaming red lips, which were extremely sensual and slightly hoarse, transmitted to the young man by the window. "Chang Zhao, you know that this big sis hates trouble the most. Yet you brought those 2 scourges to my place. What exactly are your intentions? This big sis's place is not a den for hiding and sheltering filth." With his back facing the woman, Chang Zhao looked at the lake view outside the window and slowly shook his head. After she turned around, a smile appeared on his handsome face as he said, "Using the word, hiding and sheltering filth, to describe this place is a bit too serious, Sister Shui. Those 2 are just pitiful creatures, pawns for me to play. Don't worry. It won't take long for someone to redeem them. The woman elegantly took a puff of the cigarette and shook her head. Kidnapping is not a small crime. If the other party calls the police, even your uncle will have to spend some effort to protect you. Why can't you just stay quiet for a while and not cause trouble for your uncle? My uncle has been very free lately. Chang Zhao shrugged and said, I'm really happy to cause trouble for him because of such a trivial matter. After all, he'll lose the motivation to climb up if he's too free. Besides, Li Yuchuan was miserably bullied, and the main reason was my uncle, wasn't it? Since my uncle doesn't want him to have a good time, how can I be kind to him? The woman forced a smile and shook her head. You're really different from others, kid. Forget it. You can play slowly since you want to. But keep in mind that don't touch that woman and don't hurt that child. The smile on Chang Zhao's face receded and he coldly snorted. That woman may be a bit good-looking, but she's not enough to enter this young master's eyes. As for that brat, that kick of his nearly made this old man die without descendants. He must be punished. Xiaohu has already taken some men to deal with him when we just came up. I hope he can still stand intact now. The lazy look on the woman's face gradually disappeared. She rubbed her temples and forced a smile. I'm sure you know that even a rabbit will bite when it's anxious. Li Yuchuan is the captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force, and I'm sure you're aware of his ability. I'm afraid he'll go all out against you if you beat his son too badly. Him? Chang Zhao disdainfully said. He can't even compare to a rabbit in my eyes. He's just a soft-footed shrimp at best. If he dares to play hard with me, then I'll make him taste true despair. Alas, the woman shook her head and slowly closed her eyes. She really couldn't be bothered with Chang Zhao's trivial matters. In any case, she had already advised him. If he insisted on doing things his own way, his uncle would clean up his mess if something happened. Pity, that man was a hero, yet he couldn't have a son. Why did he treat this brat as a treasure? Ring, 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 the phone on the tea table suddenly rang. The woman opened her eyes again and reluctantly grabbed the phone. She looked at the caller ID and lightly asked, Didn't I tell you, Manager Bai? I just came back from another city and I'm so tired that I don't even have the strength to speak. Someone is here to make trouble, boss. Manager Bai's urgent voice came from the phone. The woman stared blankly and slightly furrowed her brows, asking, Who is it? Don't we have security guards in the tea house? Can't they solve it? They're very skillful. Our 4 security guards on duty didn't even have the strength to fight back and were all knocked down by them, said Manager Bai. They've already gone to the 2nd floor and will probably reach the 3rd floor soon. Do you want to hide first, boss? Who are they? Asked the woman in a deep voice. I don't know. Manager Bai shook his head. But the young man in the lead looks familiar to me. The woman was silent for a moment and then indifferently said, Notify the security team and tell them to come here as fast as possible. They came to my turf to make trouble, yet they want me to hide? I, Shuejia, can't afford to lose my face. She hung up the phone. The woman looked at Chang Zhao, who shot her a curious look. She sat up straight and said, Call your men here immediately. Someone is here to make trouble and they should be here soon. Understood. Chapter 11:15. Bam! The office's door was kicked open from the outside as Wolf Head and Li Yuchuan strode into the room. After Chang Zhao and the woman looked at him, Tan Xiu leisurely walked in from the outside. The woman's expression shifted. She had seen Li Yuchuan's photo and recognized him in a flash, but she couldn't recognize Wolf Head and Tan Xiu. Who are you? Asked the woman indifferently as she walked 2 steps forward. She could tell that Tan Xiu was extraordinary. Tan Xiu glanced at her indifferently before his eyes immediately fell on Chang Zhao. He walked to Chang Zhao's side and pushed him away. Then, he sat on the sofa and lit a cigarette, saying lightly, Are you Chang Zhao? Chang Zhao vaguely felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. However, Tan Xiu's action of pushing him made him angry. He coldly snorted and said, I am. Where the hell did you come from? Do you want to stand up for this Li Yuchuan? That's right. I want to stand up for him. Tan Xiu nodded. As the saying goes, one shouldn't get into trouble with one's wife and children. It's fine if you want to mess with Li Yuchuan, but threatening him with his wife and children is against the rules. Rules are made by those with strength. Li Yuchuan is just a pitiful worm, a chess piece abandoned by others, sneered Chang Zhao. I don't care who you are, brat. But don't poke your nose into other people's business today, else your fate will be no better than Li Yuchuan's. Are you threatening me? Tan Xiu took a puff of his cigarette and sneered. I would have killed you now if you didn't have a good uncle. It can be considered as getting rid of any future troubles. Anyways, I don't want to waste my breath with you. Hand over Li Yuchuan's wife and children and I'll let this matter go. I won't let you off lightly if you dare to do such despicable things again in the future. Chang Zhao squinted his eyes. He could faintly feel that this man was just putting on an act and didn't have any power. Moreover, he seemed to be very afraid of his uncle. With such a thought in mind, Chang Zhao's arrogance suddenly soared. He turned around and walked to the opposite side of Tan Xiu. He also sat on the sofa, crossed his legs, and sneered, Brat, since you know who my uncle is, you should know that I'm not a pushover. If you want to play with me, I'll play with you today. Who do you think you are? Tan Xiu looked at Chang Zhao as though he was looking at an idiot. He shook his head and said, I've seen your uncle's information. He's a capable person, but how can his nephew be so idiotic? Chang Zhao's face turned cold and he angrily shouted, Say that again. Who do you think you are? How dare you criticize my uncle? Pa! Jean Shi strode forward and fiercely slapped Chang Zhao's face, sending him flying from the sofa to the ground. At this moment, 4 strong men rushed in from outside the door. When they saw Chang Zhao, who was obviously beaten up, their expressions suddenly changed. They rushed to Chang Zhao's side and helped him up from the ground. Chang Zhao covered his cheek, but he didn't give the order to fight back. He knew Li Yuchuan's identity as the former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force. His 4 bodyguards were not his match at all. He knew that he had to be patient and wait for a large number of security guards under Sister Shue's control to arrive. That was when he would retaliate. After touching his cheek, Chang Zhao suddenly grinned and gave a thumbs up to Jean Shi. He then walked back to the sofa opposite Tan Xiu and sat down again. Then, he coldly said, Someone once punched me, so I sent my men to chop off his arms. Someone once kicked me twice, so I sent my men to break his limbs. I'm not threatening you. I'm just telling the truth. You must have something to rely on since you dare to make trouble here. Now, I'll give you some time to make a phone call. Use all your means and call all the people you can. I used to be a schemer and unscrupulous person. But this time, I don't want to play that trick anymore. I'll play fair and square with you. Tang Xiu was silent for a moment before he slowly said, Since you're Chang Guoxin's nephew, I'll give you a good lesson today. When facing an enemy, regardless of whether the other party is a monstrous overlord or an ant in the mud, you must clearly investigate the details of the other party. You must never take them lightly. Know the enemy and know yourself, and you'll be invincible in every battle. Underestimating the enemy will likely cause you to fail miserably. I don't need you to preach to me, sneered Chang Zhao. It was Xue Zhengmei, the woman in a cheongsam with flaming red lips. Her eyes had been firmly locked on Tan Xiu the moment he entered the room. In recent years, she had been helping her father manage the security company in secret and had spent a lot of time training the security guards. Therefore, she wasn't well informed and sometimes didn't contact the outside world for months, so she couldn't recognize the young man in front of her. But, she was very confident in her ability to recognize people. She had a deep impression of Tan Xiu at first glance, but that was just her external memory. However, ever since Tan Xiu came to the office, his every move and every word and action exuded the aura of a superior, which made her secretly vigilant. That's right. Shui Zhenmei agreed with Tan Xiu's last sentence. Although they were in a hostile state at the moment, there was still a bit of appreciation in her eyes. Your Excellency doesn't look like an ordinary person. May I know how to address you? Tan Xiu glanced at Shui Zhenmei again and indifferently said, don't you know how to introduce yourself before asking others' identity? Shui Zhenmei's expression slightly changed, but she still replied, I'm Shui Zhenmei. You can call me Boss Shui or Miss Shui. I'm the owner of this tea house. Tan Xiu indifferently said, you're the owner of this tea house, which means you're helping the wicked do evil deeds. From today onwards, close this tea house of yours. A cold light flashed in Shui Zhenmei's eyes and she lightly said, it's not impossible for me to close this tea house, but you have to show me a trump card that will make me dread, right? Otherwise, wouldn't I be laughed at by others if I shut down this tea house with just a few words of yours? Tan Xiu pointed to Chang Zhao and asked, how is your strength, or the force behind you, compared to him? Shui Zhenmei pondered for a few seconds and slowly said, between the two of us. Since it's between the two of us, as long as I can make this brat bow and scrape like a slave and apologize, does that mean I have the ability to make you close this tea house? Tan Xiu said. Yes. Shui Zhenmei became more curious about Tan Xiu. She really wanted to see what kind of ability Tan Xiu had to make Chang Zhao bow and scrape to him. Tan Xiu took out his mobile. He found Chang Guoxin's private phone number from the information and dialed it. At the southern military region. Chang Guoxin got up very early as usual. Even though he was now in a high position, he still maintained the habit of exercising, so his physical fitness was very good. He had just finished his jog and poured a glass of water, but before he could drink it, his mobile phone on the table rang. He had been in a good mood recently. With the help of the Tang family's cultivation, he finally defeated his archenemy. Even the news from the top said that he might be able to go further in the near future. It must be noted that it was very difficult to go further at his current level unless he had the support of others. It was also because of this reason that he was closer to the Tang family and was more and more apprehensive about the Tang family's power. Chang Guoxin even secretly decided that he must cling to this big tree, the Tang family. It was even possible for him to have 2 more stars on his shoulders in the future. Who's calling me at this time? Chang Guoxin grabbed his mobile and saw the caller ID. It turned out to be an unfamiliar number from Shanghai. He immediately wanted to hang up. However, he recalled that his precious nephew was still in the imperial capital, so he hesitated for a moment before he answered the call and said, who is it? I'm Tan Xiu of the Tang family. An indifferent voice came out of the phone. Chang Guoxin's heart was shaken and his eyes flickered. Although he was not a member of the Tang family, he knew some things about the Tang family, especially some things about Tan Xiu. He was very clear that the Tang family's old patriarch, Tang Guosheng, had begun to train Tan Xiu as the future successor of the Tang family. The degree of importance he attached to him was even higher than that of his 3 sons. In an instant, his expression changed. Perhaps it was because Tang Xiu was likely to become the next head of the Tang family. His attitude was very humble as he said, young Master Tang, I didn't expect that you would look for me. May I know what instructions do you have for me? Chang Zhao is my nephew, right? Tan Xiu lightly said. He's in big trouble and there are only 2 paths in front of him now. Chang Guoxin was greatly shaken and hurriedly said, young Master Tang, did that bastard Chang Zhao offend you? If so, you can rest assured that I'll teach him a good lesson and make him apologize to you. It's just a trivial matter that he provoked me. I'll give you face and let him off this time, Tan Xiu lightly said. But the one he provoked is someone from the state's Special Abilities Bureau. I'm sure you're no stranger to those people, no? Hiss, Chang Guoxin gasped and said in amazement, young Master Tang, I know a bit about the situation of the Special Abilities Bureau. They are a group of terrifyingly powerful ability users. May I ask which are the 2 paths you just mentioned? Can you save that little bastard Chang Zhao's life? The first path is to wait for the Special Abilities Bureau's people to investigate him and wait for a secret execution, Tan Xiu lightly said. The second path is to be sent to the military court and be executed for treason. No matter which of these two paths he chose, they were both dead ends. As for me, of course I can save his life. But he's now clamoring in front of me, relying on his uncle who's a general. He's very arrogant. Tell me, do I need to use any means to save such a brat? A military court? Chang Guoxin hurriedly asked. How come there's another military court? Young Master Tang, what exactly did he do to unexpectedly? Chapter 11:16. The military is investigating the theft of the aero glider. Tan Xiu said indifferently, you should be able to get some relevant information given your status, right? The one who stole the aero glider is Li Yuchuan, the former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force. Do you know why he took the risk and risked his life to steal it? Was it Chang Zhao's instigation? Asked Chang Guoxin in shock. He didn't instigate it, but he forced it, said Tan Xiu lightly. Your precious nephew kidnapped his wife and son and blackmailed him for 2 million yuan. Do you think he can get away with it once the higher-ups investigate it? Do you think you can get away with it? That bastard is simply audacious. Chang Guoxin angrily shouted. Young Master Tang, you must find a way to suppress this matter. That bastard brat, I'll definitely teach him a severe lesson. He's right in front of me, and he's very arrogant, said Tan Xiu. How are you going to tell him? Just use your brain. Having said that, Tan Xiu threw the phone to the incredulous Chang Zhao and indifferently said, didn't you want to see my power? Didn't you tell me to call as many people as I can? I can make you kneel in front of me and apologize with just a phone call. Take it. I'm sure you've heard who the other party is. Chang Zhao's hands trembled a bit, but he still caught the phone. If there was anyone in the world who could make him afraid, it was none other than his uncle, Chang Guoxin. Hey, Chang Zhao tried to speak, but was interrupted as soon as he spoke. Hey my ass. You bastard. Do you know how big of a trouble you've caused? The Tang family is a top-notch family that even I have to curry favor with. It's also the support that I can rely on to advance further, or perhaps even advance 1 or 2 steps further. Yet, you dare to compete with Tang Xiu, the young master of the Tang family? Who gave you the courage? Chang Guoxin's angry roar came from the phone. The Tang family's young master. Tan Xiu. Chang Zhao's face instantly turned pale. He finally realized why he faintly felt that Tan Xiu looked familiar the first time he saw Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu of the Tang family. He was the future successor of the Tang family's patriarch, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, and the renowned young divine doctor in China. It's over. This was like poking a hornet's nest. Even if he didn't die, he would probably lose a layer of skin. Uncle Chang Guoxin's angry voice once again sounded from the phone, I don't care what you do, you must quell young Master Tang's anger and beg him to save your life. Otherwise, not only will I not be able to save you, I'm afraid I'll also be implicated by you. There's even a possibility that my uniform might be stripped off. Chang Zhao was taken aback, and then he said in horror, Uncle, it can't be, right? You bastard. Do you have nothing better to do? Why did you kidnap Li Yuchuan's wife and child, cursed Chang Guoxin? Do you know what that bastard Li Yuchuan did for that 2 million yuan? What he had done was more than enough for him to lose his head 100 times over. You forced him to get money, so you couldn't escape the responsibility. Let me tell you something. Tan Xiu's identity is so big that you can't even imagine it. So I can't save you now. The only one who can save you is him. Little bastard, if you can't handle this matter well, I'll break your legs when we get back. Chang Zhao hung up the phone in a daze and looked at Tan Xiu and Li Yuchuan with intense fear in his eyes. He was very conceited. But that didn't mean he was a desperado. He was even more fragile than ordinary people in the face of the threat of death. He had already committed a terrible disaster, and he was soberly aware that there was only one person who could save him now, Tan Xiu, whom he had just offended. Plop, Chang Zhao came to Tan Xiu in 2 steps and directly knelt on the ground. Regret and worry could be seen on his handsome face. His lips squirmed a few times and then he said, "Young Master Tang, I had eyes but failed to recognize MTI. I didn't recognize you before. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have done such despicable things, and I shouldn't have offended you. You're a magnanimous man, so please don't lower yourself to my level. If you still can't vent your hatred, you can beat and scold me, but please save me." At the side, Shui Zhengmei was completely dumbfounded. She already had a bad premonition after hearing what Tan Xiu said on the phone. But now that she saw Chang Zhao's action, a storm was set off in her heart. Young Master Tang. Is he the young master of the Tang family in the imperial capital that Chang Guoxin is attached to? In this world, only a family with the surname Tang could make Chang Zhao lose his composure and beg like this, right? Shui Zhengmei moved her eyes away from Chang Zhao's face and looked at Tan Xiu's indifferent expression. She felt that she should say something, but she swallowed the words back when she recalled her and Chang Zhao's attitude toward Tan Xiu. What should she say? What should she say? Plead on behalf of Chang Zhao. Shui Zhengmei was perfectly aware of her own identity. Although her family and the Chang family had a close relationship, they had nothing to do with the Tang family in the imperial capital. Would they care about her even if she asked for leniency? Suddenly, Shui Zhengmei recalled Tan Xiu's request and slowly said, "Mr. Tang, I apologize to you for my previous presumptuous behavior. You can rest assured that I'll close this tea house today according to your wishes." Tan Xiu shot her an indifferent look and immediately said, "It's better to be taught a lesson now than to suffer a big loss later. I hope you won't leak even half a word about today's matter, else the lesson you'll receive will be more than just a little. Get out first." Shui Zhengmei was secretly indignant. Although she was the daughter of a wealthy family, she had never been taught a lesson all these years by relying on her own ability, let alone being threatened like this. However, she was also perfectly aware that Tan Xiu's means and ability were not something she could contend with, so she could only endure the unhappiness inside and turn to leave the room. Looking at Chang Zhao kneeling in front of him, Tan Xiu said, "You should have known it would be like this earlier. It's true that you're young and full of vigor, but it's shameful for you to commit crimes by relying on your family background. Let's not talk about anything else first and release Li Yuchuan's wife and son first." Chang Zhao hurriedly complied and then shouted at the four dumbfounded bodyguards who were completely petrified at the moment, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and bring Li Yuchuan's wife and son here." One of the bodyguards hesitated for a moment and then forced a smile. "The woman is fine, but her son, both his legs are broken. Do you think we should send him to the hospital first?" Chang Zhao's pupils shrunk and an intense chill filled his heart. "What did you say?" Disbelief was written all over Li Yuchuan's face. He dashed toward the bodyguard and grabbed his clothes, his eyes seemingly shooting fire. The bodyguard's lips squirmed and he said, "You can't blame us for this. Blame your son for being too ruthless despite his young age." Young Master Chang, he nearly turned into a eunuch with a kick. I was there at the time and saw him curling up on the ground and wailing in pain for a long time. After releasing him, Li Yuchuan suddenly turned around and glared fiercely at Chang Zhao, shouting, "My son is only 8 years old. He'll never hit anyone so easily." Chang Zhao glanced at Tan Xiu and forced a smile. "Your son does look weak, not like a boy at all, but he's really powerful when he's ruthless. That kick made me unable to touch women for at least half a month. Fortunately, I was sent to the hospital in time for treatment, else I wouldn't be able to touch women again for the rest of my life." Tan Xiu waved his hand to interrupt them and said in a deep voice, "Cut the crap and bring him here immediately. I also have some medical skills. If it's not a big problem, I can treat it." Chang Zhao suddenly recalled one of Tan Xiu's identities. He immediately nodded and said, that's right. Young Master Tang is also a famous divine doctor in the country. I'm sure he can cure your son given his strength. Don't just stand there like an idiot. Hurry up and invite him over. Very soon. Li Yuchuan's wife and son were brought to the office. When the husband and wife met, apart from the woman crying bitterly, Li Yuchuan's eyes were also filled with tears despite his unyielding character. Plop, Li Yuchuan had now witnessed Tan Xiu's ability and learned that Tan Xiu was a well-known young divine doctor in China. He directly knelt in front of Tan Xiu and said with tears in his eyes, "Please save my son, Mr. Tang. He's still young. His life will be ruined if he becomes disabled in the future. Li Yuchuan's life is worthless, but if you can cure my son, my life will be yours in the future." Tang Xiu sighed inwardly. The 7 or 8-year-old boy's legs were indeed seriously injured. Even his knees were badly mutilated, obviously caused by a blunt object hitting him with a heavy force. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that even the world's top medical treatment wouldn't be able to make him recover and that he would have to sit in a wheelchair in the future. "Are you sure?" asked Tan Xiu lightly. "I'm sure," said Li Yuchuan decisively. "Tell the woman who just left to prepare water, gauze, and plasterboard for me immediately." Tan Xiu nodded and said, "Go to the nearby hospital to buy them immediately if you don't have them. All of you wait outside. I'll treat him." After a short while, only Tan Xiu and the boy, who had tears in his eyes but was trying not to cry, were left in the office. His fists were tightly clenched and his willpower was very strong. He didn't groan despite the severe pain. "Will you feel desperate if you can only live in a wheelchair in the future?" Tan Xiu didn't act immediately but looked at the boy leaning on the sofa and asked. The boy's lips squirmed a few times before he silently shook his head and said, "I know why I was beaten. They want to make things difficult for my father. I'll accept it even if I have to sit in a wheelchair in the future as long as they don't target my father." "You're willing to do it?" asked Tan Xiu with a faint smile. "I don't want to, but that's the only way." The boy shook his head. "Uncle, my legs are very painful and my bones are exposed. I know what will happen to me in the future. But I'm a bit sad." "What are you sad about?" asked Tan Xiu. "I'm afraid I won't be able to be a man like my father in the future," said the boy. Chapter 11:17. Tan Xiu smiled and rubbed his little head, saying, "Since I said that I can cure you, I can naturally make you recover. Don't worry. You'll become a vigorous and lively young man in the future." The boy's eyes lit up. He quietly observed Tan Xiu for more than 10 seconds, and then thoughtfully said, "Uncle, if my father works for you in the future, then I'll also work for you in the future." Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "Do you feel honored to work for me?" "I believe in my father's vision, and I also think that you're very powerful," said the boy. "Those people in the room just now are very afraid of you." Tan Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he asked, "Why do you think they're afraid of me?" "There were 5 people in the room when I was carried in just now," said the boy. "You're one of them, and there's another one who is about the same age as you." The way he looked at you was strange. It's the kind of look one would have when seeing a horrible person or thing. "My father also seems to be afraid of you. Sometimes he wants to say something, but he doesn't. The other 2 look at you with respect, but the premise of respecting someone is fear. I didn't expect you to analyze it so clearly and logically." Tan Xiu said with a smile, "Did you observe all of this?" The boy nodded. Tan Xiu fell into silence. He was a bit shocked inwardly because he didn't expect that the boy's observation ability was so powerful. It must be noted that he was now suffering great pain. If it were an ordinary child, he would have already screamed in pain. How could he still have the mood to observe everyone in the room? "Can you answer a question for me?" After a while, Tan Xiu slowly asked. The boy still nodded. "You should be 8 years old this year, right?" asked Tan Xiu. "You should be in the 2nd grade at your age. Can you tell me about your academic performance?" A proud look appeared on the boy's face. Even though it was only a trace of pain, he still said, "I'm the best in the whole school. I've always been the first among more than 680 4th grade students." "4th grade?" Tan Xiu looked surprised. The boy said, "I jumped 2 grades in a row." Raising his thumbs up, Tan Xiu praised, "I never thought that you're actually a little genius." That's right. Like father, like son. Your father is very good. He's quite capable. As his son, you naturally won't be too bad. The boy said, I want to be a marshal in the future, so I naturally have to work hard. Marshal? Tan Shou didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at the little guy and said, you can't be a marshal now, unless you can become the most awesome big shot in our country. The boy's expression darkened slightly when he heard this. Very soon. A basin of warm water, a few clean towels, gauze, plasterboard, and other medical supplies were all sent to the room. As the door was closed by Xue Zhengmei from the outside, Tang Xiu took out a sharp dagger from his interspatial ring and cut the boy's pants. Then, he said, it's gonna be very painful. Can you bear it? The boy trembled slightly and said, can you give me a towel? Tan Xiu's expression changed as he asked, stuff it into my mouth. Yes. The boy nodded heavily. Tan Xiu handed him a white towel and watched him stuff the white towel into his mouth. He secretly praised him in his heart. He cleaned, wiped, and used his primal chaos force to correct the dislocated broken bones on the knees and slowly moved the broken bones back to their original positions. He could clearly feel the boy's pain because big drops of sweat rolled down his face and his seemingly thin body was trembling violently. Endure it. Tan Xiu took out the body-refining potion from his space ring and slowly poured it on the boy's knees. Along with the whimpering sound coming from the boy's throat, Tan Xiu pressed his palms on the boy's knees. Time ticked by. Half an hour later, Tang Xiu removed his hands from the boy's knees. He looked at the boy who was sweating profusely and looked dispirited and listless. He was secretly surprised. Because his treatment process was simple and direct. Even an ordinary adult would find it difficult to bear the pain and would faint from the pain. He didn't expect the boy to be able to endure it. His willpower is stronger than an adult's. Even some ordinary cultivators can't compare to him in terms of willpower. It's a pity that his physique is ordinary. Otherwise, he would definitely be a cultivation genius worth cultivating. However, given his age, he may be able to achieve great achievements in the future once he embarks on the path of cultivation as long as his willpower remains as firm as a blade's edge. This thought flashed in Tan Xiu's mind. He immediately wrapped the boy's knees with gauze and fixed it with a cast. He then said with a smile, starting from today, you can only stay here for the next 7 days. Your feet are not allowed to touch the ground, and you'll need someone to help you with any movement. You'll be able to recover after 7 days. The boy asked with a trembling voice, can I sleep for a while? Go to sleep. Tan Xiu said with a smile. In the corridor outside. Li Yuchuan hugged his wife with an anxious look in his eyes. Although he learned from Chang Zhao that Tan Xiu was a divine doctor, he didn't dare to fully believe that Tan Xiu could completely cure his son's leg injury. He was afraid that Tan Xiu couldn't cure his son and that his son would become disabled in the future. He would probably feel guilty for the rest of his life if that were to happen. Creak, the office door was opened and Li Yuchuan instantly released his wife. He strode forward and asked, how is it, Mr. Tang? Don't let your son walk for the next 7 days, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Forget it. You still have other things to do, so don't worry about it. I'll give you a chance to redeem yourself, Chang Zhao. You must guard this child closely for the next 7 days. You must carry him on your back even when he needs to eat, drink, and go to the toilet. You must take care of him meticulously. If you can do it, you'll be done for. Otherwise, you'll have to pay for your crimes with your life. I'll do as you say, young Master Tang, said Chang Zhao without hesitation. I'll definitely take good care of him. Tan Xiu slowly nodded and said, I know you want to spend more time with your wife and child, Li Yuchuan. I'll give you half an hour, then you must come with me to solve your problem once and for all. Thank you, Mr. Tang, said Li Yuchuan gratefully. No need to thank me. Tan Xiu shook his head and said, you haven't forgotten what you said before, have you? Li Yuchuan stared blankly for a moment before he solemnly nodded and said, I haven't. In the viewing hall of the tea house. With a curious look on his face, Wolfhead stood in front of Tan Xiu and asked, "Do you really want to take Li Yuchuan as your subordinate, sect master? You must know that he did it for his family, but..." Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt him and lightly said, "If the army can give him a sense of belonging and he hasn't been abandoned, I'm afraid he wouldn't have done such a thing." In other words, what would you do if you were standing in Li Yuchuan's position? Wolfhead quietly pondered for a while and then bitterly said, "I'm afraid I'd have done the same thing if I were him." "That's right." Tan Xiu nodded. "Everything has two sides. He can play his role if he can control it. He can take risks for his wife and child, even at the cost of his life. This shows that he's not afraid of death, and he's affectionate and loyal. If he can become our brother in the future, I'm afraid he'll also treat you as his family in the future as long as you regard him as your closest brother. To tell you the truth, I really appreciate this kind of person, even those soldiers who are willing to risk their lives for the country." Wolfhead firmly nodded and said, "Loyalty to the country and the people is a prerequisite for every soldier. It's the most basic bottom line. But now that we've left the army, we're only loyal to you." "I'm also loyal to this country," said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Suddenly, Tan Xiu's expression moved and he lightly smiled. "It seems that Jin Shi received my order and rushed here without stopping. He's already outside. Go and bring him here." A few minutes later, Jin Shi came to the viewing hall under Wolfhead's lead. After standing in front of Tan Xiu, he respectfully said, "Sect Master, is there anything you need from me?" Tan Xiu smiled and waved his hand, motioning him to sit down. Then, he said, "Wolfhead gave me a suggestion, and I think it's very good. That's why I called you here directly to discuss it with you." Jin Shi glanced at Wolfhead and respectfully said, "Sect Master, please give me your order. I'll do my best to complete it." "Jin Shi, there's something I want to ask you before I talk to you." Tan Xiu smilingly said. "Do you think Ao and the others have become Tang sect elders but you haven't? What do you think you're thinking?" Jin Shi was silent for a while before he forced a smile and said, "I'm very unwilling, sect master. But you set the rules yourself. Since I'm not the first to become a golden core stage expert, so I can't become a sect elder, it proves that my efforts are not enough." Tan Xiu faintly nodded and said, "I'm very glad that you have this kind of understanding. But I'll give you a chance now. If you can establish a huge intelligence network all over the world within 2 years, I'll make you the newest elder of the Tang sect." Jin Shi's eyes lit up and he replied in a deep voice, "I'll do my best, sect master." "All right, I'll tell you about the establishment of the intelligence network and the expansion of the Tang sect's outer disciples," said Tan Xiu with a smile. "Are you going to expand the number of outer disciples in our sect, sect master?" asked Jin Shi curiously. "Since we're going to vigorously develop the sect, we naturally need a lot of outer disciples." Tan Xiu nodded. "Also, these outer disciples may not necessarily have formidable cultivation, but they will be of great help to the inner disciples, which will be beneficial to the entire sect." Jin Shi's expression shifted. He saw Tan Xiu take out a cigarette and hurriedly lit it for Tan Xiu. Then, he asked, "What do you mean, master?" Chapter 11:18. A glint flickered in Tan Xiu's eyes as he slowly said, "Building an intelligence network requires buying people's hearts. Money may only work for ordinary people, but for some rich and powerful people, I'm afraid they will have to come up with a bigger capital. Don't tell me you didn't encounter this kind of obstacle when you were building the intelligence network?" "You're right, sect master." Jin Shi said, "This is what I'm most helpless about. Due to the previous foundation, it's very easy for us to select intelligence personnel at the bottom level, but it's a bit troublesome when it comes to people at the higher level." "For example?" asked Tan Xiu. "For example, a small boss of a company who has millions or even tens of millions in assets. Although he's just an ordinary wealthy businessman, it'll take a lot of effort to make him wholeheartedly gather intelligence for us," said Jin Shi. "Previously, the sect had given me 1 billion yuan, and I had only subdued 12 of these wealthy merchants, and I had paid a price of several hundred million yuan. If this goes on, let alone 1 billion yuan, even 10 or 100 billion yuan will be far from enough. Furthermore, these are just ordinary wealthy businessmen. If it were those real rich and powerful people, they wouldn't even bat an eye if we throw money at them. As for those with power and influence, they are even more dismissive of money, because if they want to obtain money, they have too many ways to do so. How many provincial-level administrative regions are there in China? Tan Xiu nodded and asked. How many municipalities are there? How many autonomous regions? How many administrative autonomous regions are there? How many cities are there in total? There are a total of 34 provincial-level administrative regions in China, including 23 provinces, 4 municipalities, 5 autonomous regions, and 2 special administrative regions, said Jin Shi. There are a total of 333 prefecture-level administrative regions, including 285 prefecture-level cities, 15 regions, 30 autonomous prefectures, and 3 leagues. Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Jin Shi and said, "You know it very well, which means you've put a lot of effort in this aspect. Since I made you the person in charge of the intelligence network, I'll help you solve the problems. From now on, I'll help you select a general intelligence team leader in each province. Once they're confirmed, they'll become your direct subordinates. You'll also need to select a deputy team leader in each province and be sure to conceal the relationship between them. It'll be like splitting into 2 lines to obtain intelligence at the same time." Jin Shi was pleasantly surprised. "With your help, Sect Master, the construction of the intelligence network will be much simpler." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "I originally wanted to take advantage of this time to relax, but now it seems that I can't. However, although I'll help you solve the domestic situation, you'll have to personally build the foreign intelligence network. For the next half a year, focus your work on Huaxia. Half a year later, when the domestic intelligence network is almost ready, you can start setting up overseas." Alright, 2 hours passed quickly as the two of them conversed. When Tan Xiu stepped out of the viewing hall with Jin Shi and Wolf Head, Li Yuchuan had been waiting outside for a long time. Xue Zhengmei was also with him. "You're from the Xue family of Dongshan province?" Tan Xiu glanced at Xue Zhengmei and asked indifferently. Xue Zhengmei nodded and said, "Yes, Xue Guanzhong is my father." "Xue Guanzhong, the head of the Xue family in Dongshan province?" Tan Xiu lightly asked. "Hee, since the Xue family has delivered themselves to my door, then I'll start with them first. Xue Zhengmei, take me to see your father. Tell him to decline everything and wait for me at the Xue family's ancestral residence." Xue Zhengmei's complexion changed and she hurriedly said, "Young Master Tang, it was indeed my fault before. Please don't stoop to my level and stoop to my level. In case my father finds out that I've offended you, he'll definitely kill me." "I'm not looking for your father to pursue such a trivial matter," Tan Xiu indifferently said. "Inform him that I have something important to discuss with him in person. Tell him to pick out the most secret place of your Xue family. Keep in mind that I don't want anyone else to know about my meeting with your father." Xue Zhengmei's expression moved and she immediately nodded. "I'll inform my father right away." Tan Xiu thought for a while and waved his hand. "Forget it. Just go ahead and tell your father about it. Tell him that even the core members of the Xue family can't be informed about my meeting with him. Only you, me, and him will know about it." "Understood." Xue Zhengmei replied and quickly left. Tan Xiu then shifted to Li Yuchuan and lightly said, "Let's go. We're going to the Blue Starfish Mansion." At the Blue Starfish Mansion. This place had been requisitioned by the State Special Abilities Bureau, but Duanmu Lin didn't rush to leave and instead stayed here, waiting for the news about Li Yuchuan. He knew that the aeroglider was of great importance and that it would bring huge troubles to the military once the news was leaked out. "You haven't found him yet?" Duanmu Lin, who was sitting inside, asked in a deep voice as Aquababe entered the room with an ugly expression. "We still haven't found him, Chief," said Aquababe bitterly. "That Li Yuchuan seems to have vanished into thin air. We've activated all our intelligence networks, but we still can't find any trace of him." Duanmu Lin got up from the sofa and was about to speak when the mobile phone on the table suddenly rang. His expression shifted and he grabbed the phone. After picking up the call, he asked in a deep voice, "What's the situation?" "Chief, Mr. Tang has returned to the Blue Starfish Mansion, and the man with him is the fugitive we've been searching for, Li Yuchuan." A deep voice came from the phone. "Tan Xiu. Li Yuchuan." Duanmu Lin furrowed his brows and immediately relaxed. After hanging up the phone, he strode outside and quickly saw Tan Xiu and Li Yuchuan in the parking lot. "What's the situation, Tan Xiu?" Duanmu Lin paced a few steps forward and coldly glanced at Li Yuchuan before asking. "I originally wanted to stay out of this matter, but I didn't expect to bump into him." Tan Xiu forced a wry smile. "He's Li Yuchuan, the guy who stole the aero glider from the military camp. It's just that I didn't expect that he would give the aero glider to the previous auction organizer and immediately flee after something went wrong. He even broke into our magnificent Tang Corp's branch in the imperial capital and wanted to steal our belongings. Hence, he was caught red-handed by my men." Duanmu Lin nodded without a word. He then looked at Li Yuchuan and asked in a deep voice, "Who else did you disclose the information about the aero glider to other than the auction organizer?" "I didn't disclose it to anyone except the auction organizer." Li Yuchuan shook his head. "Also, the information I disclosed to the auction organizer was not comprehensive and I didn't disclose many important functions." "Why did you steal the aero glider?" asked Duanmu Lin in a deep voice. "Don't you know that this aircraft is a top secret of our country?" "I need money," answered Li Yuchuan bitterly. He needed money. Duanmu Lin had thought of countless reasons for Li Yuchuan to steal the aero glider, but he didn't expect the reason to be so simple. He only needed money. He even dared to steal the aero glider from the military camp? It must be noted that the seriousness of this matter was enough to send him to the military court and be executed countless times. Duanmu Lin shifted to Tan Xiu and forced a wry smile. "Now I finally understand the power of the saying, 'Men die for wealth just as birds die for food.'" A dignified former captain of the Blue Eagle Special Force, an iron-blooded warrior shouldering the mission of the country, is actually willing to disregard everything for money. "You should have investigated his situation," said Tan Xiu. "He was abandoned, and it's not easy to survive in society. It's even more difficult to become rich and powerful. Perhaps it was that game in the army that caused his mentality to change. This kind of person deserves to die," said Duanmu Lin coldly. "Senior Duanmu, since he didn't pass the information about the aero glider to anyone else, let's just forget about it." Tan Xiu smilingly said. "Let's solve this matter before any problems arise. Leave this guy to me. I need him to be the second-generation aero glider tester." "A aero glider tester?" asked Duanmu Lin with a strange expression. "It should be easy to find such a tester, Tan Xiu, right? He violated the law and should have been shot to death." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I believe Senior Duanmu is well aware of the aeroglider's performance. Our magnificent Tang Corporation needs some testers to conduct the research, testing, and adjustment process. This process is very dangerous. Let's take the first-generation aeroglider as an example. More than 200 people died before the calibration was barely accurate." "What?" Duanmu Lin finally realized what Tan Xiu said. Stormy waves surged inwardly. He never thought that the magnificent Tang Corporation would use so many lives to test the first-generation aeroglider. This was simply inhumane. How could their magnificent Tang Corporation dare to? Tan Xiu could see the shock and anger in Duanmu Lin's eyes, so he calmly said, "Senior Duanmu, you must pay a certain price if you want to get the results. You don't need to be angry, and don't think that our magnificent Tang Corporation's researchers don't take human lives seriously. I can even tell you clearly that our magnificent Tang Corporation has never violated any laws or regulations. It's because the testers of our magnificent Tang Corp are all death row inmates we secretly purchased from some foreign prisons. Do you think that we've violated the laws of China by purchasing death row inmates?" Duanmu Lin was dumbfounded. He would definitely be angry with Tan Xiao if the death row inmates were purchased from domestic prisons. But what did buying death row inmates from other countries have anything to do with him? Even if Tan Xiao purchased all the prisoners in those foreign prisons, he had no right to interfere with it. Furthermore, since he could become the director of the Special Abilities Bureau, he was naturally not a good person, so the anger in his heart vanished in an instant. He recalled that he had intercepted Tan Xiao's research and development results, causing Tan Xiao to be unable to recover a large amount of funds in a short time. This made his old face look a bit ashamed and embarrassed. Chapter 11-19. In a guest room in the Blue Starfish Mansion, Tan Xiao and Duan Mulin had already arrived from the parking lot. Only Tan Xiao and Duan Mulin came here. Tan Xiao, I believe you won't do anything that will harm our country, but I still need a promise from you today, said Duan Mulin with a serious expression. He didn't even light the cigarette Tan Xiao gave him. All right, I'll give you a promise today. As long as you're still alive, I'll never do anything that will harm Huaxia, said Tan Xiao. I'll even go all out to help our country once it's in trouble as long as you're still alive. Duan Mulin squinted and nodded without a word. A glint flickered in his eyes as he said, Tan Xiao, this promise of yours is based on the fact that I'm still alive. As for my identity and my abilities, you should be very clear about them. I can live for at least a few decades under normal circumstances. You can live for hundreds of years if I want to. Tan Xiao shook his head. Duan Mulin's body trembled. After a long silence, he slowly said, What do you want to do? I want you to live longer, but I need you to turn a blind eye to some things, said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. Your conditions are very generous and the temptation is too great, said Duan Mulin. But I'm in charge of politics, so I can't break my bottom line. If your request is too excessive, I can't agree even if you tempt me with hundreds of years of life. I'm really happy that Senior Duanmu has his own principles and bottom line, said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. But have you forgotten my promise just now? As long as you're still alive, I won't do anything that will harm Huaxia. You mean? Asked Duan Mulin. Senior Duanmu, you should be aware of my abilities and the power I have, said Tan Xiao. But I can tell you right now that if I want to, I can even overthrow the Huaxia kingdom with ease. However, as a Taoist cultivator, I have no interest in worldly power. What I pursue is cultivation, and what I pursue is to ascend to heaven and become an immortal. As a cultivator, I need to consume a lot of cultivation resources, and where do these cultivation resources come from? Naturally, they are purchased with money. I can't do things like burning, killing, and plundering. Therefore, I need to expand my influence in the secular world, obtain enormous wealth, and purchase large amounts of cultivation resources. You should understand what I'm saying, right? Duan Mulin said without hesitation, I understand. Tan Xiao nodded and said, since you understand it, then it'll be easier for you to accept it. If I want to expand my influence, I need to do a lot of things. For example, I need to set up a company and earn money through formal channels. However, making money wasn't an easy task, so I needed a lot of information to figure out how to make money. Therefore, I decided to get rid of the Darkwind organization and build a huge intelligence network all over the world. Hiss, Duan Mulin was aware that what Tan Xiao said next was a bit important, but he didn't expect it to be to this extent. Getting rid of the Darkwind organization? Building an intelligence network all over the world? If Tan Xiao could really do it, then he would make everyone in the world dread him. You don't need to be shocked, Senior Duanmu, said Tan Xiao lightly. Don't doubt my words. I can wipe out all the cultivation forces in the world if I want to. It's just a trifling Darkwind organization. I don't need to pay too much of a price, nor do I need to use my trump card. Duan Mulin suddenly recalled a woman, a breathtakingly beautiful woman who was so powerful that he couldn't breathe. He looked at the confident expression on Tan Xiao's face and asked with difficulty, that woman who threatened me, who is she to you? You mean Yen, right? Tan Xiao chuckled. She's my apprentice. That's impossible. Duan Mulin exclaimed. She's tens and hundreds of times stronger than you. It's impossible for her to be your apprentice. You. Tan Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Duanmu Lin and lightly said, "There are too many things you don't know about, Senior Duanmu. Yan is indeed very powerful, much stronger than me. But if it weren't for an accident, I could have destroyed the entire Earth with a flick of my finger and destroyed the entire Milky Way galaxy with a punch. There are some things I don't want to say, but it doesn't mean I don't have the strength to do so. It's reasonable to say that I don't need to say much to you given your identity. But I came back from that place, after all, and I'm living under the rules of this world. I'm also a descendant of China, so I can reveal some information to you." That place. Came back. Duanmu Lin's pupils shrunk and he finally realized how terrifying Tan Xiu was. Suddenly, he recalled the intelligence he once investigated on Tan Xiu. It was the year when Tan Xiu was in his second year of high school. The genius turned into a waste and was even called a fool by many people. There must be something fishy about this abnormal thing. Duanmu Lin found that he really couldn't see through Tan Xiu. It was even more difficult for him to understand what kind of existence he was. "Tan Xiu, can you seriously answer a question of mine?" Duanmu Lin gradually calmed down after a long time and asked. "Go ahead." Tan Xiu nodded. "When that terrifying demonic beast appeared in the Himalayas, why were you the one who risked your life while your disciple with monstrous strength didn't appear?" asked Duanmu Lin. "Once Yan, and the others acted, they would be detected by the heavenly Tao of this world," said Tan Xiu calmly. "They must leave this world once that happens." "They?" Duanmu Lin was deeply shocked after realizing that the woman named Yan, was not the only one under Tan Xiu's control. Suddenly, he realized something and exclaimed, "You mean, they have all become immortals?" "Become immortals? Immortals?" A disdainful look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he indifferently said, "There are some things you don't need to ask, Senior Duanmu. The reason why I'm telling you this today is mainly to make it convenient for you to turn a blind eye in China in the future." Duanmu Lin pondered for a while and slowly asked, "Has it already started?" "Almost." Tan Xiu nodded. "Since it's almost done, why do you still want to tell me?" Duanmu Lin forced a wry smile. "You can control your own intelligence network. In any case, don't let me catch you, else I won't let you off lightly. You won't be able to catch me as long as you don't take the initiative to look for them." Tan Xiu lightly smiled. "I've prepared a generous gift to thank you, Senior Duanmu. I hope you like it." Having said that, a cultivation manual appeared in Tan Xiu's hand out of thin air. He handed it to Duanmu Lin and lightly smiled. "You may be an ability user, but there's no rule stating that ability users can't cultivate cultivation manuals. As long as you can control the two energies in your body, you may have some achievements in the future." A cultivation manual? A shocked expression appeared on Duanmu Lin's aged face. He didn't expect that Tang Xiu would be so generous as to directly give him a cultivation manual. It must be noted that such a cultivation manual was extremely precious, and it would definitely cause a great uproar if it fell into the hands of others. It was even possible to set off a bloody storm. Nascent soul stage. The highest one can cultivate is actually the nascent soul stage. Duanmu Lin's hands holding the cultivation manual slightly trembled. He reluctantly moved his eyes away and looked at Tan Xiu with a complicated expression. "Is this considered as a bribe?" "I think so," Tan Xiu lightly smiled. Duanmu Lin took a deep breath and a smile appeared on his face. He then scolded with a smile, "Scram! Take that bastard and get out of here. If you want to make money by relying on the aero glider, then hurry up and develop the second generation." "Got it." Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and his figure instantly disappeared from the room. Now that Duanmu Lin was the only one left in the spacious room, he flipped open the cultivation manual again and read it for more than half an hour before he closed it again, unable to suppress the joy in his heart. Gradually, his expression turned a bit strange. As the energy in his body flowed according to the circulation route of the cultivation manual, he found that he could easily complete the qi condensation stage's circulation. What he didn't expect was that when he began to circulate according to the foundation establishment stage's cultivation route, the energy in his body broke through to the late stage of the foundation establishment stage in one fell swoop. This power is at least 10 times stronger than before. Duanmu Lin clenched his fists and felt the surging power in his body. He really wanted to roar a few times. But he eventually suppressed this impulse, and a thought sprouted from the bottom of his heart. If every ability user could easily cultivate after obtaining a cultivation technique, then the strength of the ability users in the State Special Abilities Bureau would greatly increase. When that time came, the strength of the entire Special Abilities Bureau would skyrocket. The thought made Duanmu Lin somewhat restless. He strode out of the room and shouted, "Notify all the top executives of the Special Abilities Bureau to return to the headquarters in the imperial capital, except for those in charge of the Himalayas." Outside the Blue Starfish Mansion. When Li Yuchuan jumped off the boat with Tan Xiao and returned to the shore, his heart was finally at ease. The feeling of surviving a disaster made him feel grateful to Tan Xiao. "Thank you, boss." Li Yuchuan followed behind Tan Xiao and spoke in a low voice. "I paid a great price to save your life," said Tan Xiao without looking back. "You should know what to do next." "My life is yours from now on," said Li Yuchuan respectfully. "I'll carry out any order you give me immediately. Your son is a good man. Tell him to come out of the greenhouse." Tan Xiao nodded. "Someone will pick him up soon." Li Yuchuan's expression changed and he hurriedly asked, "This is, you can refuse?" Of course," said Tan Xiao lightly. "But the consequence of refusing is that your son can only be an ordinary person for the rest of his life. You and your wife must let go of him if you want to transform into a dragon." Chapter 11:20. Metamorphosis. Becoming a dragon. Li Yuchuan suddenly understood Tan Xiao's intention. He actually wanted to groom his son. But his son was only 8 years old this year. What aspect did an 8-year-old child have that was worthy of Tan Xiao's training? Tan Xiao calmly watched Li Yuchuan, who was lost in thought, and indifferently said, "I know you have some concerns. You think that I'm training your son to keep him by my side to threaten you. You can get the hell out of here if you have such a thought. You're not worthy of me using such means given your ability." At this moment, Tan Xiao looked around and found that aside from the 2 members of the Special Abilities Bureau who escorted him and the others, only Jin Shi and Wolfhead were around the 2 cars not far away. In a flash, Tan Xiao grabbed Li Yuchuan's arm and moved lightning fast. In nearly the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Jin Shi and Wolfhead with Li Yuchuan. What? Li Yuchuan was scared out of his wits by the sudden turn of events. Sensing that Tan Xiao released his arm, he immediately raised his hand to rub his eyes and pinched his waist hard. Not an illusion. Not a dream. This. Tan Xiao took a seat inside the car and looked at the dumbfounded Li Yuchuan outside. Then, he indifferently said, "You should understand what I mean now, right? You're just a weakling worthy of training in my eyes, but there are countless weaklings like you in this world. You're not worthy of me using your son to threaten you." The car started. Li Yuchuan watched as Tan Xiao's car drove forward. Then, he turned his head with difficulty to look at Wolfhead, who had a faint smile on his face, and indifferently said, "You should be happy instead of doubting boss's intentions. There aren't many people who can catch boss's eyes, so you need to cherish him, especially for your son." Li Yuchuan felt his heartbeat speed up several times and the thumping sound was like a thunderclap roaring inside his heart. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something. His eyes instantly fell on Wolfhead. He stared at him and said, "How do you know that the boss wants to cultivate my son?" Wolfhead rolled his eyes. While walking to the driver's seat, he lightly said, "Although boss didn't speak loudly, I could still hear him clearly. I forgot to tell you, but my hearing is at least 10 times better than a normal person. Did you hear that?" At a distance of tens of meters, Wolfhead could actually hear it clearly. Li Yuchuan quickly got into the front seat and looked at Wolf Head, who started the car, and hurriedly asked, "Who the hell are you?" "Tang sect," answered Wolf Head indifferently. "What is the Tang sect?" asked Li Yuchuan. A proud look appeared on Wolf Head's face as he said word by word, "A sect formed by cultivators. If you want to become a disciple of the sect, you have to put in a lot of effort and complete the missions given by the sect. As long as you complete them well, you will have the qualifications to become a disciple of the sect." Cultivators? Li Yuchuan was not an ordinary person with no knowledge. He was once the captain of the Blue Eagle Special Combat Squad, so he knew a lot of secrets. Not only did he witness the power of ability users when he carried out missions abroad, but he also encountered cultivators. All of them were actually cultivators. Suppressing his excitement, Li Yuchuan hurriedly asked, "What's Boss Tang's status in the Tang sect? Am I now a disciple of the sect?" Wolf Head couldn't help laughing and rolled his eyes at Li Yuchuan snappily. "Are you dreaming? Even if the sect master is willing to take you as his subordinate, you can only be an outer disciple. You need to make great contributions to the sect to get the qualification to join the inner sect." "Boss Tang is actually the sect master of the Tang sect?" asked Li Yuchuan incredulously. Wolf Head nodded with deep veneration. "The Tang sect was founded by Boss, so he's naturally the sect master. Before you officially enter the inner sect, I'd like to give you a piece of advice. You must absolutely obey orders when you work in the outer sect. The Tang sect may not have many rules, but the hierarchy is very clear. You must be respectful when you meet the inner sect disciples in the future. You can't even breathe heavily when you see those elders. Of course, even I must be respectful in front of those inner sect elders." "How many inner sect disciples does the Tang sect have?" asked Li Yuchuan. "How many outer sect disciples are there in total?" Li Yuchuan asked. Wolf Head glanced at him and slowly said, "That's a secret of the sect, so I can't tell you. But there's something I need to warn you in advance. Some people in the sect may be your opponents, acquaintances, or even have a deep grudge against you. But from today onwards, you must let go of all your past grievances and treat them as your closest comrades in arms, as your brothers and sisters, as your own family. The biggest advantage of the Tang sect is its unity. Every disciple of the sect will give up their lives for their fellow sect members. I have no enemies, nor do I have any grudges with anyone." Li Yuchuan shook his head. "Don't you think Jean sure looks familiar?" sneered Wolf Head. Li Yuchuan thought for a while and said, "I did feel that he looked familiar when I first saw him, but I can't remember where I've seen him before." "He's the bloodthirsty golden lion who massacred a city in Africa," said Wolf Head lightly. Li Yuchuan's eyes widened so much that his eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. He held his breath and cried out involuntarily, "He's the bloodthirsty golden lion? The butcher who slaughtered hundreds of arms dealers in Arg City? He's a butcher." Wolf Head sneered. "That's because you haven't seen a more ruthless disciple of the sect. Forget it, I've said everything I need to say. I hope you can follow Spectre and become the newest inner sect disciple." "Spectre? That lunatic?" The blood drained from Li Yuchuan's face in an instant and he cried out involuntarily again. "If you dare to call him a lunatic in front of him, he'll definitely drill you hard for 3 days, said Wolf Head lightly. Tens of thousands of Boy Scouts were drilled by him for 3 days and nearly got their skins peeled off. You're not even as good as those Boy Scouts. The corner of Li Yuchuan's mouth twitched a few times and he was shocked to the point where it was difficult to be any more shocked. Spectre. The world's #1 assassin. He was simply a devil in everyone's eyes. Even the biggest bosses in various countries were afraid of this devil, afraid that they would appear on his mission list. You said that the Boy Scouts are tens of thousands of children, asked Li Yuchuan blankly. Will my son also be sent to the Boy Scouts in the future? Unless your son can stand out from tens of thousands of children and be appreciated by the sect master again, he can only risk his life to train in the Boy Scout army, said Wolf Head lightly. The rule of our Tang sect is that the strong will rise to the top and the weak will always be at the bottom. To be honest, even if you've become an outer sect disciple of the sect, I'm afraid you won't be able to enter the inner sect earlier than your son. Li Yuchuan fell into silence. He found that he really came across an opportunity like a carp leaping through the dragon gate. The person who gave him this opportunity not only saved his life, but also saved his wife and child, and also made him and his father become terrifying figures in the future. Li Yuchuan took a deep breath and said, "One last question. There are more than 200 felons in Israel's labor camp 1319. Are they?" Wolfhead raised his hand to interrupt him and lightly said, "There are only the two of us here today, so I can answer your question. But remember this. You've become the sect master's man, so you must never mention even half a word about the Tang sect to outsiders. Everything that I've told you today must never be revealed to anyone else." That's right, boss did it himself. Aside from Spectre, those people are all outer sect members who carry out some missions assigned by the Tang sect. Li Yuchuan was thoroughly frightened. He found that Tan Xiu's men were all a bunch of desperados, a bunch of demons and ghosts that countless people feared. Wolfhead seemed to sense his thoughts and lightly said, "You're gravely mistaken if you think that the Tang sect is a nest of demons and ghosts. The Tang sect's rule is to never kill a good person unjustly and never bully the weak. We must be friendly to ordinary people and cruel to our enemies. The entire Tang sect is like a sharp knife in sect master's hand, protecting the good and slaying those who deserve to die." Li Yuchuan immediately felt relieved when he heard that, but then another question popped up in his mind. Can those cold-blooded desperados really behave themselves like Wolfhead said? Late at night. Dongshan Province, Shui family. Wearing a coat, Shui Guanzhong looked at the dark night outside the window and listened to the strange melody. A glint flashed in his eyes. When he came to the window, he saw a figure standing in the dark corner downstairs and had a bad premonition. It was Shui Zhengmei. She was Shui Guanzhong's biological daughter and the most outstanding figure among the new generation of the Shui family. She was entrusted with the heavy responsibility of secretly managing the family's security company. But now, she had come back, but not in the open. She hid in the dark and used a secret melody signal that only the father and daughter knew to call for help. It meant that something big had happened. "What's wrong, Guanzhong?" Lin Ping, who was on the bed behind him, sat up in a daze and looked at her husband standing by the window. "Go back to sleep. I have something to deal with," said Shui Guanzhong in a deep voice. After saying that, he strode to the door and quickly appeared outside the building. After he quickly entered the dark shade of the tree, the father and daughter tacitly walked toward a darker place. "What happened?" Shui Guanzhong's voice was very low, and only Shui Zhengmei could barely hear it. "Dad, Tan Xiu wants to see you," said Shui Zhengmei. "Tan Xiu?" Shui Guanzhong stared blankly and asked with a confused face. "Which Tan Xiu is it?" "Tan Xiu of the Tang family in the imperial capital," answered Shui Zhengmei. Shui Guanzhong's expression changed and he frowned. "He's the most outstanding disciple of the Tang family and the big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation. What does he want to see me for? It's the last day. I'm begging for monthly votes." Chapter 1121. Shui Zhengmei told him what had happened in Shanghai in a low voice. Finally, she said, "I'm not sure what Tan Xiu is planning. But he asked me to come back in advance and inform you to find a secret place. The fact that he wants to meet with you must not be known by a third person other than you and me." Shui Guanzhong was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "If it's a blessing, it's not a calamity. If it's a calamity, we can't avoid it. The strength of the Tang family in the imperial capital is not something that our Shui family can compare with. If he wanted to get rid of the Shui family, it would be a piece of cake. I don't think he wants to deal with us, but he has other motives." Shui Zhengmei asked, "Dad, what should we do?" Shui Guanzhong said, "If he's looking for me for a secret matter, we really can't let outsiders know. How about this, contact him later and tell him that I'll be waiting for him at the pavilion in the middle of the lake." Shui Zhengmei's expression slightly changed and she said in a low voice, "Dad, the lake pavilion is a secret stronghold of our Shui family. The people guarding there are all trusted men you've nurtured since childhood. If Tan Xiu finds out, then... Shui Guanzhong raised his hand to interrupt Shui Zhengmei's words and lightly said, "Our Shui family is a big family with a big business and can absolutely be ranked in the top 3 in the entire Dongshan province. But it's precisely because of this reason that I'm afraid there are countless pairs of eyes staring at us and me." Tan Xiu's identity was also extraordinary. If he appeared here openly, he would also be discovered by countless forces. Only by placing it in the pavilion at the center of the lake can I be at ease. Shui Zhengmei gritted her teeth and said, "I'll rush to the pavilion in the middle of the lake and have the people there temporarily evacuate." Shui Guanzhong slowly nodded and said, "I'll still say the same thing. If it's a blessing, it's not a disaster. If it's a disaster, it can't be avoided. Tomorrow morning, I will appear at the pavilion in the center of the lake." Early morning. When the first ray of sunlight shone on the sparkling lake in the eastern suburbs of Ji City, Shui Guanzhong, who personally drove there, quickly drove the car into the dirt road ahead and disappeared into the dense woods. The lake was very large, and in the middle of the lake was an antique building. From the outside, the building looked extremely dilapidated, and the 2 long bridges leading to it were also broken. After Shui Guanzhong parked the car in the dense forest, he got out of the car and took out a black bag. He took out a diving suit from inside and quickly changed into it. Then, he observed the surroundings and found nothing suspicious. Only then did he approach the shore and gradually disappear into the lake. Half an hour later, Shui Guanzhong appeared in the dilapidated classical building in the middle of the lake. When he quickly took off his diving suit, Shui Zhengmei came up to him with a set of clean clothes. "Dad, I've contacted Tan Xiu. He should be here soon," Shui Zhengmei said. Shui Guanzhong nodded silently. After changing his clothes and dressing neatly, he walked into a room that was spotless and decorated in an antique style. After taking a seat on a mahogany chair, he slowly said, "Zhengmei, go outside and wait for him. Prepare some diving suits. If he's not good at swimming, bring him here." "All right." Shui Zhengmei nodded. Just as she was about to put on her diving suit and leave, a voice reached her ears. "No need." After a while, 2 figures silently appeared at the door of the room. Tan Xiu, who didn't have any trace of water on him, entered the room with Jin Shi. He looked at Shui Guanzhong, who got up and said with a faint smile, "Patriarch Shui, I'm Tan Xiu." A shocked expression appeared on Shui Guanzhong's face. He carefully observed Tan Xiu a few times and then asked, "How did you come here?" "We flew here," replied Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Shui Guanzhong slightly furrowed his brows and said, "Please don't joke around, young Master Tang. This place is located in the middle of the lake. The 2 bridges have been broken and there's at least a gap of tens of meters in the middle. It's very difficult to come here without wearing a diving suit." Tan Xiu raised his brows and looked at the square table at the side. His fingers pinched a few seals and a violent force immediately destroyed the square table, turning it into ashes. And at this moment, a wave of energy instantly condensed the scattered ashes into a ball of ash that was the size of a basketball, and it floated in front of them. This, Shui Guanzhong took a step back and sat on the chair with an expression as if he had just seen a ghost on his square face. Shui Zhengmei, on the other hand, also looked like she had just seen a ghost with fear covering her delicate face. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and slightly lifted his legs as he walked toward Shui Guanzhong step by step. When he came before Shui Guanzhong, his feet were nearly a meter away from the ground. Just like that, he stood in the air in front of Shui Guanzhong and asked with a strange expression, "Now, do you believe that we flew here?" Gulp, Shui Guanzhong desperately gulped down his saliva. He was, after all, the patriarch of a family with extensive knowledge. After a brief shock, he gradually calmed down and nodded. "I believe you." Tan Xiu smiled and his figure instantly appeared on the chair opposite Shui Guanzhong. After taking a seat, he said with a smile, "Patriarch Shui, please don't think that I'm Superman. I just have some abilities that Superman doesn't have. Of course, I'm sure you're very confused about this meeting, aren't you?" Shui Guanzhong stood up and personally brewed a pot of tea for Tan Xiu. After respectfully handing it over to Tan Xiu, he returned to his original seat and nodded. This Shui is indeed puzzled, and I hope young Master Tang can dispel it. You should thank your daughter, said Tan Xiu. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have set my eyes on you. After all, there are many big families in Dongshan province, and some of them are stronger than your Shui family. This time, I'm here to give your Shui family an opportunity, as well as a chance for you and your daughter. As for whether you can take it or not, it's all up to you. Shui Guanzhong realized that Tan Xiu was about to reveal his purpose, so he immediately asked, Please speak, young Master Tang. I want to establish an intelligence network that covers the entire China, said Tan Xiu. I want you to be the team leader in Dongshan province. In other words, as long as you promise me, you'll be a member of the intelligence network I've arranged. What do you want to do? Asked Shui Guanzhong. You're not qualified to know what I want to do, said Tan Xiu indifferently. You only need to know that you must fulfill your duty once you promise me. Shui Guanzhong forced a smile and said, Young Master Tang, the state won't allow it. Tan Xiu interrupted him and indifferently said, The director of the Special Abilities Bureau, Duan Mulin, will turn a blind eye as long as he doesn't catch my intelligence agents. Besides, an intelligence agent who is caught by others is simply trash, and it's not a pity to lose him. Shui Guanzhong was secretly startled. He didn't expect that Tan Xiu had such great power that even the terrifying figure of the Special Abilities Bureau was willing to turn a blind eye. Do I still have the right to refuse, young Master Tang? You're a smart man, so you naturally know what will happen if you refuse me, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. Of course, I won't make you work for nothing. I told you that I'll give you and your daughter a great opportunity, as well as your Shui family. As long as you become the team leader of Dongshan province, you'll be my man. Shui Guanzhong pondered for half a minute before he firmly nodded and said, I promise you. Tan Xiu gave him a thumbs up and praised, a wise man submits to circumstances. But don't you want to know what kind of opportunity I'll give you and your daughter? Young Master Tang, we'll take whatever opportunity you give us, boss, said Shui Guanzhong seriously. It's our honor to work for you, young Master Tang. Tan Xiu chuckled. You're indeed worthy to be the Shui family's patriarch. You can see things clearly and know that there's no turning back, so you immediately set your position. I'm sure you've seen the ability I just displayed. Let me tell you something. I'm a cultivator, and my strength is beyond your imagination. Since you've chosen to work for me, I'll teach you and your daughter a cultivation technique. Although the basic level of this cultivation technique is very low and can only let you cultivate to the peak of qi refinement at most, it can also let you and your daughter become experts. Even if you face a martial Dao Grand Master, you can easily kill them with a slap. Shui Guanzhong and Shui Zhenmei exchanged glances, and their eyes suddenly lit up. Tan Xiu continued, as long as you and your daughter perform well in the future, the subsequent cultivation techniques will be rewarded to you. Foundation Establishment, Golden Core, Nascent Soul. In short, the later cultivation techniques will depend on your ability to collect intelligence in Dongshan province. But if you don't do well or your identity is exposed, you'll be replaced and the entire Shui family will face extermination. Opportunity and crisis coexisted. Shui Guanzhong took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, I firmly believe I can do it well, boss. But if I don't do well, or if my identity is exposed, you can do whatever you want to me. Tan Xiu nodded and pointed to Jin Shi. He's Jin Shi, the person in charge of the entire China's intelligence network. He'll be your immediate superior in the future. He'll help you with the construction of the intelligence network in Dongshan province. However, the deputy team leader of Dongshan province will be selected by him. You're not qualified to know who the other party is. Both of you will exist at the same time. Shui Guanzhong's expression slightly changed as he nodded and said, I understand. I'll go all out if there's competition. Tan Xiu took out the cultivation manual he had written in advance from his interspatial ring and handed it to Shui Guanzhong. He then threw a bottle of pills to him and said, You'll figure out the cultivation matters yourself. This porcelain bottle contains 6 essence amassing pills that have been weakened by 10 times. After you've familiarized yourself with your cultivation, take one every 3 days once you start cultivating. You should be able to feel a trace of true essence growing in your body after you've taken 3 pills. Thank you for the reward, boss. Shui Guanzhong and Shui Zhengmei replied at the same time. Tan Xiu looked at Jin Shi and indifferently said, I'll give you half a day to discuss the preliminary situation of the intelligence network construction in Dongshan province with the father and daughter. I'll go ahead and wait for you in He province. Brothers and sisters, hurry up and throw out your monthly votes, or they'll be reset !! Chapter 1122. Zheng City, He province. After Tan Xiu arrived with Wolfhead and entered a taxi, Wolfhead reported in a low voice, Boss, I had a comrade in arms in Zheng City. He was seriously injured and disabled in a mission, so he retired earlier than me. I've read the intel of He province and found his name. I know that he's from a family in Zheng City. Which family? Asked Tan Xiu. The Fan family, replied Wolfhead in a low voice. Tan Xiu also read the intel when he came to He province this time. He learned that there were not many intelligence personnel in He province for the time being, and the amount of information they collected was pitiful. It would be a good choice if he could find someone familiar with the situation here to understand the situation. Contact him and see him, said Wolfhead. He used to be my comrade in arms, boss. We've been through life and death together. But we haven't contacted each other for 6 years, so I don't know if he's changed or not. Pondering for a moment, Tang Xiu then said, I know your concerns. Being in a place is different from being in the army. The army is purer and purer. Many of the iron-blooded soldiers in the army will have their temperament change after they enter society. But since you mentioned him now, it means that you still believe in him. Contact him. You'll know if he's changed after you meet him. Understood. Wolfhead replied and took out his mobile phone. Zheng City, Yuhong Lane. Shu Shenjia Express Hotel was the hotel with the best environment and the best service in Yuhong Alley. The owner, Fan Gang, was even a reputable figure in Yuhong Alley. He was a righteous person who dealt with people from all walks of life, yet he was able to mingle with them perfectly. At this time, the general manager's office of Shu Shenjia Express Hotel was filled with smoke, and the pungent smell of smoke filled every corner of the room. The curtains were still drawn despite it being broad daylight, and the lights in the room illuminated the space. You can't play like this, brother Gang. You've won 9 rounds in a row. Do you want to win all our money? A tattooed, bare-chested man threw the cards in his hand on the table and said with a wry smile. Another burly man in a black vest with a cigarette hanging from the corner of his mouth also angrily said, Brother Shui, I know you're lucky today, but isn't this too heaven-defying? The few of us lost so badly. Even if you're lucky, you should have secretly gone easy on us. That's right. Fan Gang, who was wearing a vest and a thick gold chain around his neck, had a smile on his tough face. He quickly swept the stacks of money on the table in front of him and grinned, Your nephew is going to attend primary school this year, isn't he? No matter what, I have to earn some tuition fees for him, right? How much did you guys lose? He was just making a ruckus here. Hurry up and deal the cards. I'm going to break the record today and have a 10-game winning streak. Pfft, your money is enough to send my nephew to the moon to study. Black-hearted. Fan Gang did not care about their words at all. He smiled and lit a cigarette. Ring, 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 his cell phone on the table suddenly rang. While he was shuffling the cards, Fan Gang grabbed his phone and looked at the caller ID. He found that it was an unfamiliar number and was about to hang up when he suddenly remembered that he would not be home for dinner tonight. He had yet to tell his wife. Therefore, he directly picked up the phone and wanted to chat with the caller for a while before calling his wife. Fan Gang speaking, who is this? It's me. Wolfhead's deep voice came from the phone. Fan Gang stared blankly for a moment. He faintly felt that the voice was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember whose voice it was. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, Who is this? Wolf head. The voice came from the phone again. Fan Gang thought for a moment and his expression drastically changed all of a sudden. He abruptly pushed the table in front of him, stood up and called out, "Are you Captain?" "It's me." Fan Gang's face turned red and he excitedly called out, "Captain, where are you now? I've missed you so much all these years." The other three strong men exchanged dismayed glances upon seeing Fan Gang's expression. Fan Gang had always been calm and collected in their eyes, and this was the first time they saw him lose his composure like this. "I just arrived in Jing City. Let's meet somewhere." Fan Gang turned around and walked outside. As he dashed out of the door, he hurriedly said, "You've arrived in Jing City? That's great. I'm at Yuhong Alley. Where are you? I'll pick you up immediately. Send me your specific address, I'll come find you." "All right." Fan Gang hung up the phone and quickly sent a message. He then turned around and went back to the room. He looked at the eyes that were cast on him at the same time. He suppressed the excitement inside and said in a deep voice, "Brothers, I have something important to deal with today, so I can't accompany you to play cards. I'll treat you to wine and meet some other day as an apology." A big man with a bare back and tattoos curiously asked, "Who is it, Brother Gang? Who can make you lose your composure like this?" "It's a friend I haven't seen for many years," said Fan Gang. "He's in Jing City, so I need to see him." "All right." The others didn't say anything after hearing it and left with a lack of interest. After seeing off his three friends, Fan Gang excitedly rubbed his hands and dialed a cell number, saying aloud, "Old Wei, send me as much God's nectar as you can get. I'll pay you 10 times the price." "Fuck off. I only have 2 bottles, Old Wei, I'm begging you. I need some God's nectar to entertain a very important friend. It's very important. Sell it to me and I'll owe you a favor." The other party was silent for a few seconds and then slowly said, "I'll send someone to deliver it to you." Fan Gang hung up the phone and dialed another cell number, quickly saying, "Send me to Daoxiang House and buy all 18 specialties there. Do remember to send them to me at once." "Understood." Afterward, Fan Gang made several phone calls in succession. After giving some instructions, he came to the first floor and spoke to the lobby manager who came to greet him in a deep voice, "We'll have a distinguished guest later. Take some people to seal off the 3rd floor after he arrives. Anyone who comes up must report to me and get his permission before they can come over." "But someone will." Half an hour later. Fan Gang, who was standing in Yuhong Alley, kept looking at the road in the distance. He had once been glorious in his life, but it was the rain of bullets and rain of blood many years ago. He wielded a steel spear and killed powerful enemies. This was what he once believed in, Unfortunately, ever since he left that olive green land and put down the spear in his hand, he had lost half of his heart. The other half was his group of brothers who fought side by side with him day and night. 6 years. It seemed to be a long time, but it was just a blink of an eye for him. With the passage of time, not only did the brotherhood not diminish, it continued to increase instead. He missed them more and more. Suddenly, his burly body shook slightly, and his eyes shone with intense excitement. He clearly saw 2 people slowly coming from the corner of the street not far away. One of them was his former brother, his former captain. Wolf Head. In a flash, Fan Gang dashed toward Wolf Head. As tears welled up in his tiger eyes, he hugged Wolf Head in less than 10 seconds. Their fists hit each other's back, but neither of them spoke. Tan Xiao looked at the 2 men hugging and glanced at Fan Gang's right leg. With his eyesight, he could naturally see that there was something wrong with Fan Gang's right leg. Although his speed was still very fast, it was somewhat unnatural. Whether it was the span or the stability, it was obviously not enough. "Captain." Finally, after the 2 separated, Fan Gang said with red eyes, 6 years, 1 month, and 3 days. We brothers haven't seen each other for 6 years, 1 month, and 3 days. All these years, I've been dreaming to see you again, to see our former brothers. Wolfhead could feel that Fan Gang's words came from his heart. He patted him on the shoulder and said in a deep voice, Little Five is dead, De Zhuang is dead, Xiangzi is dead, Ah Long is dead, and Xiao Dongbei is dead. The others are all here. Little Five? De Zhuang? Xiangzi? Ah Long? Xiao Dongbei? Fan Gang suddenly looked up and controlled his tears to not let them flow out of his eyes. After a while, he asked with a slightly hoarse voice, What about the other brothers? Where are they? Wolfhead turned to look at Tan Xiu. He shook his head and said, Let me introduce you, little gang. This is my boss, as well as the boss of the other living brothers. He's Tan Xiu. A look of disbelief appeared on Fan Gang's face. He looked at Tan Xiu and then at Wolfhead. After seeing Wolfhead nod to him, he accepted the fact and said, I'm Tan Xiu, the general manager of the magnificent Tang Corporation, the famous young divine doctor of China. Boss Tang, I'm Fan Gang, Wolfhead's sworn brother. What about now? Tan Xiu shook hands with him and lightly smiled. Now? Fan Gang instantly realized Tan Xiu's meaning. He glared at him and said in a deep voice, Whether it was in the past, present, or future, they are all my brothers. Brothers that I've sworn to live and die with, brothers that I can give my life to. Tan Xiu patted Fan Gang's shoulder and lightly smiled. Lead the way. Anyhow, we're your guests. You can't make us accompany you to chat on the street. Fan Gang suddenly came to his senses. He turned to Wolfhead with an apologetic look and said, The food and wine are ready. Come with me. Tan Xiu followed Fan Gang. His eyes glanced at his leg again and said, If my guess is correct, your right leg should be a prosthetic one, right? Fan Gang's expression turned stiff and he silently nodded. In the past, he wouldn't have been discharged from the army early had it not been for his right foot and leg being blown up when he was carrying out a mission abroad. This matter had simply become a sore point in his heart and had always been a pain in his heart. As a gift for our first meeting, Tan Xiu lightly smiled and said, I'll cure your leg and restore it to its original state. Fan Gang stopped and looked at Tan Xiu for a while. Then, he forced a smile and shook his head, saying, Boss Tang, you must be joking. My leg is gone, so how can it grow back? I appreciate your kindness. Chapter 1123. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and didn't emphasize that he could cure Fan Gang's leg. It was either he believed it or he didn't believe it. The opportunity had come, but Fan Gang could only blame himself for not grasping it. On the third floor of the Shushinjia Express Hotel, the spacious and bright general manager's office was no longer in a mess like before. For cleaners had cleaned the office non-stop, and the entire office was now clean and tidy. Even the floor was spotless. The sofa and the coffee table in the middle of the office had been moved to the corner, replaced by a rectangular dining table and 4 leather chairs. Fragrant dishes and 2 bottles of God's nectar were also placed on the table. A brand new tea set, teapot, and teacups were placed on the side, emitting smoke and a faint aroma of tea. Please take a seat, 2 gentlemen. Fan Gang personally pulled out a chair and motioned Wolfhead to sit first. Although he was puzzled as to why Wolfhead would lower himself to work for Tan Xiu given his character, but in his mind, even if Tan Xiu was Wolfhead's boss, it would still be difficult for him to win his respect. Wolfhead slightly shook his head and personally pulled out a chair for Tan Xiu. After Tan Xiu took a seat, he then sat on the chair next to Tan Xiu. Looking at Fan Gang, who slightly furrowed his brows and also sat down, Wolfhead calmly said, Little Gang, I haven't come to see you for so many years due to my own reasons. I hope you can forgive me. Whether we're in the army or in society, you're always my brother. I understand. Fan Gang nodded heavily. Wolfhead continued, I came here this time to catch up with you. On the other hand, my boss has something he wants to discuss with you. But before that, I hope you can seriously treat every word my boss said to you, including his words that he can cure your leg. Looking at Tan Xiu with a strange expression, Fan Gang immediately forced a smile and said, "It's not that I don't believe Boss Tang, Captain. It's just that my leg, you know how serious the injury is. Nobody can make me grow another leg unless the immortal is alive." "I told you to believe in my boss," said Wolfhead in a deep voice. This, Fan Gang felt helpless in his heart. Even though he didn't believe it, he still nodded. Tan Xiu patted Wolfhead's shoulder and said with a faint smile, "Wolfhead, I know what you're thinking. If you will let me try, I will cure him. Let's not talk about this for now because we still have a lot of places to go, so let's talk about business first." Wolfhead nodded in response. He then looked at Fan Gang and said, "Little Gang, my boss personally came to this city this time because he wants to know more about He Province from you. The bureaucracy, the business world, and the underground forces. I believe that as a descendant of the Fan family, you should be very clear about them." Fan Gang was confused. "Why do you ask?" Wolfhead said, "Gangzi, as a brother, I can only tell you one thing. My boss has his own ideas, and it's confidential. He can't tell others for the time being. Just like what we did in the past, don't ask what you shouldn't ask, else it will bring you a lot of trouble." Fan Gang's brows furrowed again. Although he felt a bit lost inwardly and felt that the brotherly relationship between them had changed, he didn't show it. He just looked at the brotherly relationship between them and slowly said, "The forces in He Province are very complicated, and the network of relationships is even more complicated. Some people have eyes and ears, and some families have deep heritage. Add to that the political officials behind them. In short, it's too difficult to explain everything clearly. Even if I'm well informed and have a good understanding of Jing City, I still can't fully understand the situation in the whole province." "Can your Fan family be ranked in the top 5 in He Province?" asked Tan Xiu. "Top 5? Fan Gang wore a strange expression and let out a dry smile. "Let alone the top 5, it's already good enough to be ranked in the top 20. A disappointed look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he said, "Tell me about the top 5 families in He Province according to what you know." Fan Gang pondered for a moment and shook his head. "I can't say the exact top 5, but I can say the top 3. The number 1 family in He Province, the Zhu family, has many descendants and ancient martial arts experts. Whether it's the business world or the political world, their descendants can be seen everywhere. Even in the surrounding provinces, their shadows can be seen. Therefore, the Zhu family deserves to be the number 1 family in He Province. The Yellow family can be ranked second because their land is in Xian City. The big boss of Xian City is a member of the Yellow family, and the Xinfeng Tower is their property. They are involved in countless industries, and their speed of making money is also terrifying. The floating snow chateau, the villa master is unknown, and the vice master is Xue Mengdai. More than 70% of the entertainment and transportation industries in He Province are under the floating snow chateau's control. The biggest security company in He Province also belongs to them. Rumor has it that every city in He Province, from the big ones to the small ones, the Public Security Bureau chief's position is inextricably linked to the floating snow chateau. These 3 families have deep foundations, but I'm not sure to what extent. What I'm sure of is that they have their own armed forces and a large number of ancient martial arts experts." Tan Xiu's eyes flickered as he watched Fan Gang finish his explanation. He didn't pay much attention to the first and second families, the Zhu and Yellow families, but he was a bit curious about the floating snow chateau because there were many uncertain factors in Fan Gang's introduction. Even Tan Xiu could clearly see that there was something wrong with the floating snow chateau. If it wasn't attached to other forces, then this floating snow chateau could be of use. Furthermore, he wanted to know who the floating snow chateau's villa master was. "Where's the floating snow chateau?" Tan Xiu lit up a cigarette and asked slowly. "Lianying County," answered Fan Gang. "You mean, this floating snow chateau is also located in Jing City?" asked Tan Xiu in surprise. "Like the Zhu family, it's also a local." "That's right." Fan Gang nodded. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, there's a saying that two tigers can't live on the same mountain. Both of them can exist in Jing City at the same time and develop at the same time. It's quite interesting. Fan Gang, do you think the Zhu family knows about the floating snow chateau's background? Even if they don't know everything, they should know more than me, said Fan Gang seriously. The Zhu family is very domineering and had some conflicts with the floating snow chateau in the past. Instead, it was because of a conflict more than 10 years ago that caused both sides to suffer considerable losses. Later on, I heard that the floating snow chateau's villa master came forward. Since then, the Zhu family has never made things difficult for the floating snow chateau. I don't know what happened exactly. Who's the Zhu family's patriarch? Asked Tan Xiu. Zhu Xinghe, answered Fan Gang. Tan Xiu got up and patted Wolfhead's shoulder, saying with a faint smile, it's not easy for you brothers to get together. Have a few cups of wine. I'm going to take care of something, we'll stay here tonight. All right. Wolfhead knew what Tan Xiu was going to do, so he nodded without a word. Inside the office. Fan Gang's eyes retracted from the door where Tan Xiu disappeared. After 4 or 5 minutes, he looked at Wolfhead and forced a smile, Captain, I really didn't expect that you'd become someone's bodyguard. I'm not a bodyguard. Wolfhead shook his head. Fan Gang raised his brows and asked, then what is it? Wolfhead was silent for a while and then said, I'm different from you. I've been an orphan since I was a child and joined the army when I was a teenager. I've been accustomed to the hail of bullets and going through fire and water all these years. Only by following him can I return to my former life. Fan Gang abruptly got up and incredulously said, what did you say? Following him can you return to the hail of bullets? Going through fire and water and going through fire and water? Isn't he the big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation? Besides, he also has some Chinese medicine skills. Wolfhead waved his hand and motioned him to sit down. Then, he said, Gang, don't inquire about him if you don't want to return to your former life. I can only tell you one thing, and that is that his power is not something you can imagine, and his terror is also not something you can imagine. Tell me, Captain. Is what he does good or evil? Fan Gang asked in a deep voice. Yes. Wolfhead replied with a resolute and decisive tone. Fan Gang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that the captain wouldn't lie to him. After thinking for a few seconds, he said, Captain, I also want to be with you. Wolfhead shook his head and said, if you want to be with us, you must be prepared to die at any time. Let me ask you, after you graduated from the army, did you get married? Do you have a wife and children? Do you need to take care of your parents? Can you let go of your current status? This, Fan Gang hesitated for a moment and then bitterly said, it's been a long time. Though I still have my skills, I can't be compared to the past. I'm talking about the mentality. Wolfhead smiled and said, if you can't let go, then live a good life. We used to be old brothers, so I'll give you a big gift if there's a chance in the future. What big gift? Fan Gang was confused. If you're willing, your child will be more brilliant and have greater achievements than you in the future, said Wolfhead with a meaningful tone. Fan Gang stared blankly and asked with a surprised expression, you mean? I'll give my son to you to train. Wolfhead nodded without a word and said, I can't help you for now because my status is too low. In case I make boss unhappy, I'll have a hard time in the future. But wait for me, as long as you're willing, your son will definitely have a meteoric rise. Though he won't be able to go down in history, he'll be much better than you. Of course, if he's outstanding and can, your Fan family will be proud of him in the future. Fan Gang hesitated for a long time before he forced a smile and said, I'm willing, but my wife. Wolfhead sighed and shook his head, I didn't say anything. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and said, Gang, my boss can cure your leg. Remember, don't doubt him, because there's nothing he can't do in this world. You must ask him to cure your leg when you see him again. It's a new month, I'm looking for a guaranteed monthly vote. Chapter 1124. In the evening, a cool breeze bypassed the eaves and passed through the gap of the door, gently caressing Zhu Xinghe's face inside the room. Even the strands of white hair in front of his temples were slightly fluttering. At the Zhu family's manor. It was the most heavily guarded place in the entire Jing city, just like the inner courtyard of the imperial palace in ancient times. Open sentries and hidden sentry posts were everywhere. Even for a martial Dao grandmaster with a decent lightness skill, it was extremely difficult to sneak into the Zhu clan's villa without a sound. Zhu Xinghe was now 60 years old, but his body was still strong and healthy, with a pair of wise and far-sighted eyes on his ruddy face. It could be said that the Zhu family could develop to its present scale and become the #1 family in He province mainly because of his own hard work. "Who's there?" Zhu Xinghe, who was quietly reading a book, suddenly shouted with a changed expression. At the same time, he grabbed a sharp dagger in his hand and held it in a backhand grip, his eyes focused on the closed door. Creak! The door was gently pushed open and Tan Xiu, who was wearing a black casual outfit and a bronze mask, strode into the room. A smile was revealed in his eyes when he saw Zhu Xinghe's action. "Zhu Xinghe. You're the Zhu family's patriarch, right?" Zhu Xinghe coldly stared at Tan Xiu. He didn't immediately notify the family's guards because he was perfectly aware of one thing. This man was very powerful since he could come here without anyone noticing and stand in front of him. There was also someone like him in the past who appeared in front of him without alerting the family's guards. Although it was only once, this man was indeed very powerful. "Who are you?" Tan Xiu strode into the room and closed the door. He then grabbed a chair and put it in front of Zhu Xinghe and lightly said, "It doesn't matter who I am. I don't have any intention to kill you either. I took the liberty to come here this time to ask you a few questions. I'll leave as long as you answer me honestly and give me a satisfactory answer." Zhu Xinghe slightly furrowed his brows and lightly said, "There was also someone like you who stood in front of me without making a sound, Mr." But she still introduced herself as it's the most basic courtesy. "If you want me to answer your questions, no problem, but I need to know who you are." Tan Xiu lightly said, "If you know my identity, it will bring you a lot of trouble and even a lot of trouble to your Zhu family. Even so, you still want to know my identity?" "My family has never been afraid of trouble," said Zhu Xinghe in a deep voice. "Are you sure?" Tan Xiu's aura surged out in an instant, directly suppressing Zhu Xinghe as he sneered. Zhu Xinghe's expression changed drastically. He struggled to get rid of this terrifying pressure, but what shocked him was that even though the true qi in his body surged crazily and he almost exhausted all his strength, he still couldn't move an inch. This person, how terrifying, even more terrifying than her in the past. Tan Xiu asked again, "Are you sure?" Zhu Xinghe fell silent. Although he could speak now, he didn't dare to persist. Given the terrifying strength of the other party, he was afraid that he alone could kill all the guards of the Zhu family in one night, including all the members of the Zhu family. After a long while, with a bit of helplessness and bitterness, Zhu Xinghe slowly asked, "What do you want to ask?" Tan Xiu retracted his aura and crossed his legs. He then took out a half-pack of cigarettes and lit one up. Afterward, he threw the remaining pack to Zhu Xinghe and lightly said, "Your Zhu family is the #1 family in He province. I think it's not only your strength that's powerful, but also your intelligence network. You're in a high position, so you should have met that person before. The main purpose of my visit this time is that I hope you can talk to me about the floating snow chateau." "The floating snow chateau?" Zhu Xinghe's expression slightly changed and he forced a wry smile. "You're the same kind of people. Why do you have to make things difficult for an ordinary person like me? If there's any feud between you, I'll trouble you to solve it yourself. Of course. Our affairs won't affect you or your Zhu family," said Tan Xiu. "I just want to get some information. After all, we all know that knowing the enemy and knowing yourself is the key to victory in every battle." "Are you and the floating snow chateau enemies?" asked Zhu Xinghe. Tan Xiu stretched out a finger and shook it. No. I can't be sure that the floating snow chateau is my enemy. Answer me, Zhu Xinghe. Who is the floating snow chateau's master? Zhu Xinghe was silent for a moment and slowly said, Shui Wuhan. Be more specific, said Tan Xiu. Shui Wuhan. She's a woman. I don't know what she looks like. I've only seen her once in my life, said Zhu Xinghe. At that time, she wore a bronze mask just like you and appeared in front of me. She's very strong. The aura she released at that time was slightly weaker than yours, but the gap wasn't big. As for the rest, I don't know. You mean, she came to see you personally because of the friction between you two? Asked Tan Xiu. Zhu Xinghe instantly realized that this mysterious man must have investigated him and the floating snow chateau before coming here. That's right. So, you mean that she's also a cultivator? Tan Xiu nodded. Apart from cultivators, who else can have such formidable strength like you? Zhu Xinghe forced a wry smile. I'm very strong among ordinary people and have broken through to the martial arts grandmaster realm more than a decade ago. But compared to you, it's like the difference between clouds and mud. Tan Xiu quietly pondered for a few minutes and then asked again, what's the special characteristic of this person? She's tall and wore a white dress. The only special characteristic is that she was barefooted, said Zhu Xinghe. I saw it very clearly at that time. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes and nodded. Tell me about the floating snow chateau's situation. Zhu Xinghe nodded and said, the floating snow chateau is known as the third major force in He province, but that's not the case. If my guess is correct, the overall power of the floating snow chateau is definitely much stronger than our Zhu family. Needless to say, just Shui Wuhan alone is enough to exterminate all the members of our Zhu family if they were to fight. The current manager of the floating snow chateau is the deputy chateau master, Shui Mengdai. This woman is very strong and has powerful means. In just a short span of 20 years, the floating snow chateau's business has spread all over the province, and many businesses have been quietly monopolized by them. That's right, I need to emphasize that the members of the floating snow chateau are all women. All women? A surprised expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face. Yeah, all of them. Zhu Xinghe forced a smile. It's said that women can hold up half the sky, and it's completely verified by them. Those women may have some men under their control, but those men only work for them and are not members of the floating snow chateau. As far as I know, there's only one man who can step into the floating snow chateau in the past few decades, and it happened a few months ago. Who's that man? Tan Xiu's expression shifted and he asked. I don't know much about him. I only know his name, Chu Yuan, answered Zhu Xinghe. Chu Yuan. A handsome face emerged in Tan Xiu's mind, along with his elegant appearance. He was once the successor of the Imperial Garden in Shanghai, a famous business genius in Shanghai, a member of the occult sect, and a former pursuer of Shuiyu. However, how could he enter the floating snow chateau? Could it be that some woman in the floating snow chateau has taken a liking to him? The thought of this possibility made Tan Xiu immediately smile and he asked, is there anything else about the floating snow chateau? Something very special. Zhu Xinghe shook his head and said, we may be in Jing City, but the floating snow chateau has hidden itself too deeply and is very low-key. Those who are exposed to the outside world are those who work for the floating snow chateau. Even I don't know much about the members of the floating snow chateau. Tan Xiu no longer asked about the situation of the floating snow chateau and instead asked, aren't you afraid that I'm a member of the floating snow chateau? Aren't you afraid to answer my question? Zhu Xinghe smiled and shook his head. I just told you that there are no men in the floating snow chateau. Tan Xiu nodded in response. The door instantly opened and Tan Xiu, who was sitting on the chair, disappeared into thin air. There was only a faint sound of the door closing, proving that someone had just been there. Huff, Zhu Xinghe heaved a sigh of relief and took out a cigarette with trembling hands. He lit it up and took a puff, but his expression slightly changed all of a sudden. This cigarette. He could easily feel that the smoke turned into a warm current that flowed to his limbs and bones as he inhaled it. Just this puff alone was enough to make him feel that it was worth several months of painstaking cultivation. Suddenly, a familiar voice entered his ears. Inform your Zhu family's intel operatives to stay dormant. Tell them not to deliberately gather any intel or investigate anyone for the next 6 months. Zhu Xinghe's expression changed and a look of awe appeared in his eyes. He stood up and cupped his fists, saying, "This Zhu Xinghe dares not disobey your command. The Zhus will no longer pay attention to intel for the next 6 months." Whoosh! 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 Several figures flickered lightning fast and instantly appeared outside the door. As the door was pushed open, a middle-aged man in a black training suit and carrying a long saber on his back vigilantly glanced around. Then, he respectfully cupped his fists and said, "What happened, Patriarch?" Zhu Xinghe walked out of the door and observed the surroundings a few times. Then, he forced a smile and said, "Some guests just came." Everyone's expression changed, revealing a look of shock. "Is it the one from the floating snow chateau again?" exclaimed the middle-aged man in a low voice. "No. It's someone more terrifying than her." Zhu Xinghe shook his head. The few of them exchanged dismayed glances and suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. The one from the floating snow chateau had given them a huge shock and awe a decade ago. They didn't expect that someone more powerful than her would appear now. Chapter 1125. When Tan Xiu returned to the Shu Xinjia Express Hotel, Jin Shi had already arrived. Wolf Head, on the other hand, had a strong alcoholic smell since he drank some wine, but he was still in high spirits as he waited for Tan Xiu. "How was it, Sect Master?" asked Wolf Head with a glint in his eyes. "I thought the Zhus should know more about the floating snow chateau since they're the #1 family in Yi province." Tan Xiu shook his head. "But I personally asked Zhu Xinghe and found that he doesn't know much about the floating snow chateau. It seems I need to go there myself if I want to figure out the ins and outs of the floating snow chateau." "I'll go with you, Sect Master," said Jin Shi. Tan Xiu thought for a while and slowly shook his head. "Notify Xiaoxue and tell her to come here personally. Try to get her here before tomorrow evening." "Understood," replied Jin Shi respectfully. Lianing County was only 100 kilometers away from Jing City's downtown area. Compared to Jing City, this place could definitely be called a remote and desolate place. However, the natural environment here was very good with mountains on one side and rivers on the other. An ordinary-looking manor was located right here. The floating snow chateau. It had a very large area, so large that even 10 football fields added up couldn't compare to this manor. The buildings here weren't modern and were all composed of antique pavilions and pavilions. From the outside, only some pavilions could be faintly seen inside. But in the dense forest, there were many antique pavilions. Except for the 3-storied pavilion in the middle, all the other pavilions were 2-storied. The 3-storied pavilion in the middle was a forbidden area of the floating snow chateau. Even the 8 2-storied pavilions around it were also forbidden areas of the floating snow chateau. Except for some people with special identities in the chateau, no outsider was allowed to set foot inside. Even Xue Mengdai, the deputy master of the chateau, needed to be notified if she wanted to enter. Night fell. A cold wind blew past, and 2 hazy silhouettes descended from the sky, instantly disappearing into the dense thicket. It was already early winter and the leaves on the trees in Jing City were fluttering. Withered leaves could be seen everywhere, but the manor was full of spring with green trees. There were even colorful flowers blooming among the trees. Countless birds were wandering around, and all kinds of colorful butterflies were fluttering. Interesting. In the woods, Tang Xiu observed the surrounding environment as a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Gu Xiaoxue smiled and said, "This place has obviously been transformed by an array, Grand Master. We should be inside the array now. If you don't want to alarm anyone, you'll have to put in some effort." Tan Xiu's expression shifted as he shook his head and said, "We've been discovered. Many people are already rushing in our direction. It seems that once someone enters this array, they will be noticed by the people monitoring this array. Since that's the case, there's no need for us to look for it ourselves. Saying. He took out a zither from his space ring. This zither was given to him by Gu Yen. It was carved entirely from warm jade, and its strings were forged from the tendons of a serpent dragon. It could be said that this zither was a very impressive magic tool. Suddenly, a tea table and a small stool appeared in front of Tan Xiu. As Tan Xiu took a seat, he placed the zither on the tea table in front of him and his fingers instantly stroked the strings. Ding, ding, notes flowed like a stream of water from Tan Xiu's fingertips. The melody of the greeting invitation demonic tune was very pleasing to the ear. At this moment, hundreds of people in the floating snow chateau all looked at Tan Xiu's direction, and many people who were proficient in music looked surprised. Inside the three-storied attic, Xue Wuhan sat cross-legged on a praying mat and closed her eyes in cultivation. There were 8 pieces of chalcedony arranged according to the 5 elements and 8 trigrams array around her. It was somewhat similar to a spirit amassing array in that it could also gather the world's energy from all directions, resulting in a very high concentration of the world's energy here. Ha! The sound of the zither sounded and the veiled Xue Wuhan instantly opened her eyes. Her graceful figure appeared at the window, and her eyes seemed to be able to see through the dark barrier and see the person playing the zither in the dense forest array. What's this zither sound? A figure silently appeared next to Xue Wuhan, her beautiful eyes also looking in the direction of the forest. Xue Wuhan slightly tilted her head and said, "This man has a very high attainment in music, at least much higher than me. His zither skills have almost reached the pinnacle. I've only heard it from you before, but no one else can compare to him." Alas! Han Qinggu sighed faintly and said, "Just go. He didn't come here for me. I'm afraid the one he's looking for is you." "You know who he is?" asked Xue Wuhan in surprise. "Apart from him, there's absolutely no one else in the world who has such zither skills," said Han Qinggu. "Wuhan, remember my words. You must try your best to agree to whatever he wants. You'd better be respectful in front of him and don't make him unhappy." Xue Wuhan was slightly startled and incredulously asked, "Daoist Han, is he very terrifying? What's his identity?" "You'll know his identity later," said Han Qinggu with a forced smile. "But I can't tell you whether he's terrifying or not. I can only tell you that his strength is not below mine." "I understand." Xue Wuhan slowly nodded. "But I'm curious. Since you know each other and met in my floating snow chateau, why don't you go see him?" "I've been dreaming to see him, but I'm afraid he'll never want to see me," said Han Qinggu faintly. "Since he doesn't want to see me, why should I go there and make him unhappy?" Xue Wuhan instantly realized that Han Qinggu had a very special relationship with the zither player. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem for Han Qinggu to see anyone she wanted given her terrifying strength. Whoosh, a beautiful figure flashed and in just a few breaths, Xue Wuhan appeared in the dense forest array. Her eyes instantly fell on Tan Xiu, who was playing the zither. She immediately recognized Tan Xiu's identity. Back in the Himalayas, she had disguised herself and participated in the siege operation against demonic beasts. She had seen Tan Xiu's elegant demeanor at that time. She had always been a proud and arrogant woman, yet she couldn't help but be secretly tempted after meeting Tan Xiu. Unfortunately, she had sent some people to investigate Tan Xiu and learned that Tan Xiu had a lot of female friends. Therefore, she could only secretly feel regretful and cut off the throbbing in her heart. After a while, her eyes fell on Gu Xiaoxue. Even though she was a woman, she still felt a bit stunned. The song ended. Tan Xiu slowly looked up. As his eyes swept over the barefooted woman in front of him, the zither, the tea table, and the stool were instantly put into his interspatial ring. He cupped his fists and said, "Please forgive me for taking the liberty to visit." "It's my honor to have Daoist Tang here," said Xue Wuhan with a smile. "Do you know me?" asked Tan Xiu with a smile. "It's been a while since we last met in the Himalayas." Shui Wuhan nodded. But Daoist Tang's graceful bearing has always lingered in my mind. Tan Xiu tried his best to recall, but he couldn't recall seeing the floating snow chateau's master in the Himalayas. He secretly shook his head and said, "You must be joking, Chateau Master Shui. I really didn't expect that there would be a place like the floating snow chateau here. May I know which sect or school Chateau Master Shui belongs to?" "I don't belong to any sect or school." Shui Wuhan shook her head and said, "My family inheritance has been passed down to me for 12 generations. Tan Xiu nodded and said, "A small hermit hides in the mountains, while a big hermit hides in the city. It seems that Chateau Master Shui is a very powerful figure. Even this array you arranged is quite extraordinary. Please don't praise me, Daoist Tang." Shui Wuhan forced a wry smile and said, "I felt ashamed when I saw the array you arranged in the Himalayas. I think if you want to, I'm afraid that you can destroy my array in an instant." Tan Xiu let out an indifferent smile and didn't deny it. Instead, he asked, "Are you really a rogue cultivator, Chateau Master Shui?" "That's right." Shui Wuhan nodded. "Do you have any relationship with other cultivation sects or other forces?" asked Tan Xiu again. "I don't like to show my face in public and hate troublesome things." Shui Wuhan shook his head. "Especially in the last few decades, I've hardly paid attention to the worldly affairs and have only left the manor twice. Hence, I don't have any relationship with other forces." "That's great." Tan Xiu nodded. "May I know what orders do you have for me, Daoist Tang?" asked Shui Wuhan. "I don't have any orders. I just want to discuss a deal with you." "I won't let you suffer a loss if you agree," said Tan Xiu with a light smile. "What kind of deal?" asked Shui Wuhan. "A cultivation art that can allow one to cultivate to the immortal stage, a batch of pills that have a great effect on cultivators, and an immortal sword." "I want to make Manor Lord Shui mine," said Tang Xiu. "What do you think?" Shui Wuhan's eyes glinted and he shot a deep look at Tan Xiu. Then, he said, "No wonder someone told me not to be enemies with Daoist Tang. He also told me to try my best to satisfy your needs no matter what. It seems that Daoist Tang is much more terrifying than I thought. Do you agree to it or not?" asked Tan Xiu. "To be honest, Daoist Tang's conditions are very tempting," said Shui Wuhan. "Even I, a cultivator who has just barely broken through to the golden core stage, can't help but be tempted. It's just that I don't like to be constrained, so please forgive me, Daoist Tang. Everyone has their own aspirations, so I won't force you." Tan Xiu nodded. "It's a pity that I have a way to help you ascend and become an immortal, but you didn't accept it." Shui Wuhan shook his head and said, "It's not that easy to ascend and become an immortal. Daoist Tang has yet to ascend and become an immortal, no? I, Tan Xiu, don't like to boast." Tan Xiu smilingly said, "I wouldn't have said it if I didn't have the confidence to help you become an immortal. If you follow me, your future stage won't just be on Earth. If you refuse, you'll have to rely on your own efforts to go further in the future."